Chapter 891. The Way of Gods and Demons. This was the cultivation system created by Feng Zichen himself. How could it be? Puzzled, Feng Zichen continued to look down and saw three familiar faces. Feng Jie, Jiang Xiong, and Jiang Hui. They were Feng Zichen's 3 disciples. No wonder I couldn't find them no matter how hard I tried. It turns out that they were here and left the untainted land long ago. At this time, Feng Zichen's doubts were all solved. He also learned the whereabouts of his 3 disciples, who were lost in this unknown world. Who is it? Between heaven and earth, there was a sudden roar. Immediately, the power of heaven and earth rolled over like a wave and rushed toward Feng Zichen. It was Feng Zichen who accidentally found the whereabouts of his disciples. Under the agitation of his emotions, there was a flaw and a part of his aura was leaked, which was noticed by the masters in this world. This power? Feng Zichen was about to fight back, but suddenly he realized that the power was far stronger than he had imagined. It was far beyond the level of the primordial Taoist priests and could almost be compared with the primordial Daluo Jingxian. How could it be? Feng Zichen was shocked. He had just confirmed that the strongest master in this world could only be the primordial Taoist priests. Once he surpassed this level, there was a risk of death. But why was there a master who could almost be compared with the primordial Daluo Jingxian in this world? Although he was puzzled, Feng Zichen also knew that it was not the time to seek the answer. Now he was only a wisp of divine thought which could barely deal with the primordial Taoist priests. But it was impossible for him to fight a master who could be compared with the primordial Daluo Jingxian in this state. Feng Zichen's strand of divine thought would be killed in one blow. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen did not hesitate and directly dispersed the divine thought. With the information about this world, he returned to the untainted land and returned to his body with the roots of the tree of world. Rumble! The power of heaven and earth attacked, but it struck empty air. Then several powerful divine senses appeared, searching this realm back and forth, trying to find some clues. However, in the end, they all undoubtedly failed, unable to find anything. Although Feng Zichen's Hongmeng incarnation was only at the level of the Khanate Taoist priests, it was still very powerful. But he came with the roots of the world tree. The tree of world's cultivation base was comparable to the 9th heaven of primordial chaos experts. Unless one was an expert of the same level, it would be very difficult to detect the traces it left behind. Although there was an expert comparable to primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian in this world, Feng Zichen was certain that the other party was not a true primordial chaos expert. This was because Feng Zichen did not sense the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian's unique primordial chaos Dao runes in that power. It was a perfect Taoist rhyme. It did not possess that kind of power. Therefore, Feng Zichen concluded that the other party was not primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, but had temporarily possessed the power comparable to primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian through some unknown method. Such an existence would definitely not discover the traces left behind by the world tree. Even if he felt that something was wrong, he could not tell what was wrong. In the Hongmeng continent, as the divine senses returned, Feng Zichen's expression could not help but become strange. The Western mythical world. I didn't expect there to be such a world in this world. In addition, I don't know how Feng Jie and the other 2 got to that world. This realm is hidden so well. If not for the help of the world tree, even I would not have been able to detect the traces of this realm. I don't know how they found this place and got lost in it. Moreover, this world is so mysterious that even the overlords of the chaos demon gods want to pry into it. They have planned for this for countless years. However, Feng Jie and the others have already entered this world many years ago. This opportunity is truly shocking. Thinking of what he had seen in the other realm, Feng Zichen pondered silently. First of all, he was sure that the Khanate Taoist priests were the limit of that realm. There were definitely Khanate masters who were stronger than him, but they were all dead. Secondly, although the person who attacked Feng Zichen had the power of primordial chaos, he was still in the realm of the Khanate Taoist priests. Otherwise, Feng Zichen would not have left so easily just now. This meant that there was still a secret method in that realm that could increase one's strength. This is troublesome. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen could not help but sigh. If there was such a secret method in the other realm, it meant that even if his Hongmeng incarnation personally rushed to the other realm, the male lead would still have the advantage and would be at a disadvantage. As for Feng Zichen's original body and other incarnations, he could not use them. Even if Feng Zichen's original body went there, he would still be affected by the remaining qi of the end in that realm, which would cause unknown dangers. Therefore, if he was not completely confident, Feng Zichen would never use his incarnation or even his original body. The only one he could use was this Hongmeng incarnation that had just reached the realm of the Taoist priests. Feng Zichen would not send any power that was higher than the realm of the Taoist priests to that realm. His original body and incarnation that could dominate that realm could not be used. The incarnation that could be used could not dominate that realm. Therefore, Feng Zichen felt that it was troublesome. After thinking about it, Feng Zichen decided to temporarily forget about going to that realm. It would not be too late to go to that realm after increasing his power to the limit of the Taoist priests. With Feng Zichen's original body's realm of the ninth heaven of Hunyuan, even if his incarnation only had the power of the Khanate Taoist priests, it was still not something that ordinary sage-to-be could contend against. With such power, it was more than enough to dominate the other realm, but it was more than enough to protect himself. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen suddenly took action. It was difficult for others to increase their strength, but it was not difficult for Feng Zichen. Right now, he had something important to do. Once he succeeded, he would definitely be supported by the heavenly way, and his cultivation realm would skyrocket. What Feng Zichen wanted to do was to transform the islands into realms. What was the meaning of transforming the islands into realms? It was to transform the countless islands floating on the sea outside the 5 continents into realms. The large island would transform into a major kiliacosm, the middle island into a medium kiliacosm, and the small island into a small kiliacosm. This was not a decision that Feng Zichen had thought of on the spur of the moment, but a decision that he had made after careful consideration. These small islands were said to be part of the human world like the 5 continents, but in fact, they were different from the 5 continents. The small islands and the 5 continents were simply 2 different worlds. This difference was not from a certain aspect, but from all aspects. In terms of cultivation foundation, the small islands were not as good as the 5 continents. In terms of Khanate spirit qi, the small islands were not as good as the 5 continents. Even the living beings born on the island were weaker than the 5 continents in terms of Khanate spirit qi. If that was all, it would be fine. The key was the attitude of the heavenly way. The heavenly way did not treat these small islands as part of the 3 realms. Not only did the destiny of the human world gather in the 5 continents, but there were very few living beings on those small islands who knew about the heavenly way. In other words, the heavenly way did not pay attention to those small islands at all. Its gaze had always been fixed on the 5 continents. As a result, most of the living beings on the island did not know about the existence of the heavenly way. The heavenly way's attitude was obvious. Feng Zichen had secretly pondered for many years and finally understood the heavenly way's plan. Perhaps it felt that these small islands were a burden and had weakened the prenatal energy of the 3 realms. If not for these small islands, all the prenatal energy would gather in the 5 continents. That would definitely cause more changes in the 5 continents. To the heavenly way, the 5 continents were already big enough. It was enough to have the living beings here to perform the Tao for it. There was no need for extra places like the small islands. After Feng Zichen understood the thoughts of the heavenly way, he naturally formulated a plan. He wanted to turn the islands into worlds and separate these small islands from the three realms, turning them into subsidiary worlds of the three realms. In this way, it would be an act of following the heavens and responding to the Tao. It was worthy of supreme merit and great luck. However, Feng Zichen's plan was not only that. It was just turning the islands into worlds. There were many people in the three realms who could do this, but it did not show Feng Zichen's ability. For this, he planned to use these small worlds as array cores after turning the islands into worlds to set up a peerless array to transform the chaos chi and strengthen the origin of the primordial world. Only in this way could he display Feng Zichen's supreme methods. It was not difficult to do this, but it was a little troublesome. First of all, if he wanted to succeed, he had to know how many small islands there were in the primordial world. Feng Zichen was very clear about this. It was exactly the number of 1 yuan, 129,600. Next, he had to lock onto the location of these small islands. This was not difficult for Feng Zichen. Zhou Xing illuminated the entire three realms. Feng Zichen looked down from the Ziwei star and saw the entire human world. Naturally, the location of the countless small islands could not be hidden from Feng Zichen's eyes. Now that the location of the island was confirmed, it was time for the most crucial and troublesome step. He had to inscribe formation patterns on the island and refine formation flags. He had to use the power of the world to turn the island into a world. At the same time, the array flags also had the use of stabilizing the world. When the 10,000 worlds were established, under the guidance of the array flags, the worlds formed by these small islands would automatically move to suitable positions to form a supreme array. Otherwise, he would let Feng Zichen do it and turn the small islands into worlds one by one. Then, one by one, they would be moved to suitable positions. Not to mention whether this method was tiring or not. Just the time it took was unacceptable to Feng Zichen. Not to mention, Feng Zichen was essentially a lazy guy. He would never spend so much effort to do these things. Naturally, he would do whatever was convenient for him. After making up his mind, Feng Zichen's several incarnations started at the same time. First, they comprehended several innate arrays in the untainted land. Then, they borrowed some of the mysteries of the chaotic demon deities' arrays. Finally, they comprehended a supreme array called the 10,000 Worlds Array. This array used the 129,600 worlds as branches and the three realms as the main body. Together with Panga's Dharma form, it turned the untainted land into a huge whirlpool and inhaled the chaotic chi from all directions. At this time, the role of Panga's Dharma form was manifested. It was a huge converter that turned the chaotic chi into congenital chi and then scattered it into the three realms and the 129,600 small worlds. This idea had not deviated from Feng Zichen's philosophy. The untainted land was created by Pangu and formed by his physical body. It was right to treat the entire untainted land as Pangu. Everything was done according to Pangu. Even if there was a mistake, as the untainted land and the great Pangu continued to resonate, it would automatically correct itself. At that time, the untainted land would become stronger and stronger. However, although this method was good, there was a huge flaw. Everything in the untainted land would be related to Pangu. In the future, it would be fine if Pangu reached the realm of the eternal great Tao. The untainted land would naturally rise and become an eternal world. From then on, it would no longer be troubled by destruction. However, if Pangu failed to break through, the untainted land would definitely be destroyed. There was no chance of survival. Feng Zichen's move to change the untainted land was equivalent to betting all his chips on Pangu, betting that he could attain the Tao. This was a very normal thing. After all, the existence of the untainted land was the place where the great god Pangu developed the Tao. If Pangu succeeded, the untainted land would naturally succeed. Similarly, the untainted land's advancement to the eternal realm also meant that Penga's merit was complete and he had achieved the realm of the great Tao. The two of them were in a relationship where one of them would prosper and the other would suffer. It was understandable for Feng Zichen to do so. With the array diagram, the next thing was simple. He only needed to refine the array flags according to the array diagram and then engrave the array on the island. Refining the array flags required a lot of resources. Carving array patterns on countless small islands required a lot of manpower. Feng Zichen's incarnation of Hongmeng was indeed the richest and most powerful in Hongmeng. However, in the entire 3 realms he was nothing. But it didn't matter. He didn't have resources, but the great emperor of Ziwei did. The title of the richest man in the untainted land was not an exaggeration. It didn't matter if he didn't have people. The great emperor of North Star had people. As the current #1 force in the untainted land, the human race didn't lack ordinary masters. With a thought from Feng Zichen, the human race immediately began to work with the support of various forces. All kinds of heavenly materials and earthly treasures were transported from the boundless starry sky. In the hands of the refiners of the human race's hall of heavenly works, they turned into array flags with mysterious auras. Then human masters took action. With these array flags and a large amount of precious resources, they went overseas and visited the small islands. They were going to set up array flags and carve array patterns. Once all the islands were set up with formation flags and engraved with formation patterns, Feng Zichen would have a chance to put his plan to good use. At that time, the untainted land would undergo another shocking change. Although it couldn't be compared to the birth of the 3 realms, from a long-term perspective, this change would bring about greater significance. The reopening of the boundless starry sky and the actions of the human race immediately attracted the attention of many people. Then they guessed that it was the great emperor of Ziwei or the human emperor who had made a big move again. Unfortunately, no matter how they deduced, it wasn't that they couldn't deduce any information about this matter. This wasn't Feng Zichen shielding the secrets of the heavens, but the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao also felt that this matter was of great importance. It had a far-reaching impact on the untainted land and had endless benefits. Therefore, the heavenly Tao personally shielded the secrets of the heavens and didn't allow anyone to spy on this matter. It was afraid that someone would destroy this matter. P.S. It was an hour earlier. I don't know if the adjustment of the schedule was successful. In addition, the book is really at the end. Chapter 892. On the Hongmeng continent, Feng Zichen lived and commanded. He included the small islands into the array formation system he had built. At the same time, he was also trying to communicate with the heavenly Tao and leave marks on the small islands to open up a passage for ascension. Once the small island transformed into a world, its upper limit would be lowered. In the minor Kiliacosm, the strongest person was only a celestial immortal. In the middle Kiliacosm, the strongest person was only a golden immortal. Only the greater Kiliacosm had the qualifications to give birth to connate Taoist priests. Therefore, Feng Zichen wanted to leave a mark on every small island so that after they transformed into a world, they could use it to open up a passage for ascension. At that time, once an expert reached the upper limit of the world, an immortal light would fall and connect him to the central divine land to reduce the pressure on the lower realm. As for why he wanted to ascend to the central divine land and not to other places, was there a need to explain the reason? Naturally, it was because the central divine land was Feng Zichen's territory. He did not have the habit of supporting his enemies. Time flew. In the blink of an eye, thousands of years had passed. In these thousands of years, with the full help of the human experts, Feng Zichen's plan had been more than half completed. The array flags had been placed on every small island in the primordial world. Similarly, every island had been engraved with array patterns by the human experts. As long as Feng Zichen gave the order, this 10,000 worlds array could be activated. He did not choose an auspicious day. To Feng Zichen, The day he chose to activate the array formation was the real auspicious day. Future generations would commemorate this day. With a thought, Feng Zichen released his divine thought and resonated with the way of the heavens in the unseen world, borrowing supreme power from it. With Feng Zichen's current magic power, it was difficult to open up the 10,000 worlds in one fell swoop. Therefore, he needed the help of the heavenly Tao, and this matter was obviously beneficial to the primordial world. The heavenly Tao would not refuse. Basically, it would grant Feng Zichen's request. If he wanted power, he would give it to him. With the power of the heavenly Tao, Feng Zichen instantly felt that he had become omnipotent. This was not an illusion. It was real. Feng Zichen, who had mastered the power of the heavenly Tao, was indeed omnipotent in the primordial world. With a thought, he could even knock the 3 pure ones out of their positions. Of course, he could only think about it. If Feng Zichen really dared to do it, the way of heaven would take back the power it had given him. Rise! With a thought, Feng Zichen used the power of the way of the heavens to stir up the power of the void of heaven and earth, forcibly tearing the void where the 5 continents were and the void where the countless islands were. World, the world, the world, world, the world, the world, 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 chi, the world, the world, the world, 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 world. And soon the world, world, world. To the world, world. World, 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 world. To form a world of world, world. Of the world, 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 world. World. To the world, world, world. To the world, to the world, 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 to form. In just a few years, the 5 continents were surrounded by a layer of invisible boundary walls. This also caused the 5 continents to become a new world from now on. This is what is Great Emperor Zhui doing? Why did he separate the 5 great continents and turn them into a new world? The primordial world's great divines naturally recognized that the person who caused the changes in the 3 realms was the reincarnation of Great Emperor Zhui. But it was because of this that they were puzzled. What was Great Emperor Zhui trying to do? Why did he do this? Although they were puzzled, they did not think of stopping him. This was because, without the heavenly Tao's consent, Great Emperor Zhui would not be able to separate the 5 great continents. He would definitely suffer a backlash from the heavenly Tao. Now that Great Emperor Zhui had done this, the heavenly Tao did not react. This undoubtedly meant that the heavenly Tao had acquiesced to this. How could they refuse something that even the heavenly Tao had agreed to? Ignoring everyone's surprise, Feng Zichen continued with his actions, using the power of heaven and earth as the foundation. Feng Zichen circulated the cyclic sword sutra, creating thousands of swords in the sky. He slashed down at the void where the countless islands were located. In an instant, the void shattered. The islands were separated from the 3 realms by Feng Zichen, forming independent entities. Then, the Tree of World appeared again. Majestic world origin chi spewed out and began to repair the void fragments. At the same time, it also transformed the void around the islands into a solid world wall. Changes were happening outside the islands. Changes were happening inside the islands as well. The array inscriptions that Feng Zichen had ordered people to inscribe on the islands began to emit resplendent light as they were activated. Suddenly, the power of the void around the islands seemed to be pulled by an invisible force. It surged wildly in the direction of the islands. Then, it was transformed by the array into pure innate world origin, slowly strengthening the island's world origin. At the same time, the heavenly Tao was trembling. Wisps of heaven and earth origins fell from the sky and flowed into the islands below. From the looks of it, the heavenly Tao was determined to get rid of the burdens that were the islands. In order to speed up the transformation of the islands, it had sacrificed the heaven and earth origins that had painstakingly accumulated. Rumble. With the augmentation of the heaven and earth origins, the changes to the islands immediately turned intense. The laws were reconstructed and order was reorganized. The world wall was also rapidly growing, and the land in front of it grew. Soon, the islands had the embryonic form of a world. It was also at this moment that the array flags that Feng Zichen had ordered people to bury in advance were activated. Resplendent light bloomed from them and gradually resonated with the array flags on the other islands. Then, a miraculous change happened. Countless runic patterns appeared in the void, connecting the islands together, forming a mysterious array that slowly operated. In the beginning, the array formation still had many inconsistencies, but as the array formation operated, it automatically corrected itself. The islands shifted their positions, and the array formation became more and more harmonious and smooth. The transformation of the islands into a world and the operation of the array formation all required time. It was not a day's work, but thousands of years. During this time, Feng Zichen did not idle. Instead, he comprehended the changes during the birth and operation of the myriad worlds, turning them into his own foundation. 10,000 years later, the myriad worlds were born and returned to their positions. The array formation became complete and began to operate. Rumble. In an instant, under the activation of the array formation, the myriad worlds began to revolve around the 5 continents. The power generated by the myriad worlds' operation condensed into a huge whirlpool, swallowing the surrounding chaotic chi. Silently, Pengu's Dharma form appeared and used its magic to transform the chaotic chi into innate world origin chi. First, it scattered into the 3 realms, then into the myriad worlds. Chapter 893. The formation was completed. In other words, Feng Zichen's plan to surround and protect the untainted land had succeeded. At this moment, the invisible power of heaven and earth blessed Feng Zichen, causing his realm to skyrocket. This was a gift from heaven and earth to Feng Zichen. Heaven and earth blessed him with everything it had to help him cultivate. The Taoist priests were at the early stage, middle stage, late stage, and complete stage. Soon, Feng Zichen's realm was about to break into the sage-to-be realm. But at this moment, thinking of the unknown Western world, Feng Zichen forced himself to wake up from his enlightenment. He transferred the power of heaven and earth to the Emperor Star, his main body. He couldn't break through to the sage-to-be realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to enter the unknown Western mythical world. After the power of heaven and earth left his body, Feng Zichen suddenly felt relaxed. His realm also didn't continue to increase. On the other side, Feng Zichen's main body in the boundless starry sky was blessed by the power of heaven and earth. The long-lost balance between the qi of Hongmeng and the power of the Great Path was finally broken. Along with the power of heaven and earth, there was also a part of the chaotic qi that the untainted land plundered from the chaos outside the realm. How could Feng Zichen compare the amount of chaotic qi that a world breathed? It was simply too much. After devouring the chaotic qi, the amount of Hongmeng qi increased at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon, it overshadowed the power of the Great Path and began to slowly nibble away at it. At the same time as the power of the Great Path weakened, Feng Zichen was liberated more of his power. In other words, he already had the power to control the operation of the boundless starry sky. In the next moment, the boundless starry sky operated with a loud bang. A powerful suction force was emitted, pulling the heaven realm to operate as well. It fell from the east to the west. At the same time in the netherworld, the ghost emperor Fengdu suddenly made a move. He used his authority as the master of the Yin court to pull the netherworld upward. If one were to treat the 3 realms as a sphere, then the heaven realm and the netherworld would be the upper and lower sides of the sphere, while the 5 great continents would be inside the sphere, surrounded by the heaven realm and the netherworld. At this moment, the heaven realm was falling down and the netherworld realm was rising up. The 5 continents were affected and began to flip over. The entire 3 realms flipped over, then flipped over again. Yes, Feng Zichen was treating the three realms as a ball and making it spin from top to bottom. The heavenly realm was formed by the clear qi of the heavens, and it was in harmony with yang. The nether realm was formed from the accumulation of innate turbid qi. As the two spun, it was like the rotation of yin and yang. It drew upon the power of the grand Tao and gave rise to endless changes. In an instant, with the cooperation of the three realms, the amount of chaotic qi that the 10,000 worlds' great array absorbed from the outer realms skyrocketed by several times. Even more chaotic energy surged over. First, it was refined by Pangu's Dharma idol, turning into pure chaotic energy. Then, it was tempered by the Taiji diagram of the three realms again, evolving into the chaotic energy of creation, giving birth to even more mysteries. Once these changes were completed, the origin of the primordial world began to slowly increase. The momentum of heaven and earth that supported Feng Zichen undoubtedly became stronger. At the same time, the status of Great Emperor Ziwei continued to increase. He was faintly on par with Tao ancestor Hongjun. Wrong. It should be said that if Tao ancestor Hongjun had not integrated the Tao, then his status would be inferior to Great Emperor Ziwei from this moment on. This was because Feng Zichen's actions had a great impact on the primordial world. If this continued, the origin of the primordial world would increase and continue to advance. Including Feng Zichen's previous merits, these added together were no less than the merit of creating the world. It could be said that Pangu had the merit of creating the primordial world, Tao ancestor Hongjun had the merit of educating the primordial world, and Feng Zichen had the merit of strengthening the primordial world. The primordial world was constantly growing in the hands of Great Emperor Ziwei. He was the true master of resurgence. In the future, there would be legends of Great Emperor Ziwei reviving the primordial world. Moreover, what the three realms absorbed from the primordial world was not only the chaotic energy, but also countless treasures that were born in the primordial world. In the future, the primordial world would not lack innate spiritual treasures. After various primordial world treasures fell into the three realms, they would naturally evolve into innate spiritual treasures. In terms of increasing sources of income and reducing expenditures, Feng Zichen could be said to have done the best he could. As the origin of the primordial world became more vigorous, the innate qi would also become more abundant. At that time, heaven and earth would be able to support more cultivators. In other words, in the near future, various cultivation systems would welcome a great boom. As the concentration of spiritual qi increased, the number of cultivators would also increase. As long as the cultivation system relied on spiritual qi, their strength would increase. Wasn't this prosperity? At that time, no matter what cultivation system it was, whether or not it was related to Great Emperor Ziwei, they would have to worship him as their ancestral master and burn incense to worship him day and night. There was no reason other than the fact that the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was brought by Great Emperor Ziwei. Since the various cultivators had received benefits from him, they naturally had to establish a relationship with him. Otherwise, how could they enjoy his benefits? Acknowledging him as their ancestral master was naturally the best choice. Whether it was the immortal path or the Buddhist path, when the successor met Great Emperor Ziwei, they would have to respectfully address him as their ancestral master. Although he did not preach, it was better than preaching. More and more power of the Great Path was devoured by the Hongming Qi. Gradually, the Hongming Qi began to transform. Its essence was sublimated and became the Hongmeng Origin Qi, which was the embryonic form of the Hongmeng Purple Qi. It was the foundation of eternity. At this moment, if Feng Zichen spent 1,000,000 years of effort, he could condense a true Hongmeng Purple Qi. However, Feng Zichen could create several or even more than 10 Hongmeng Purple Qi. However, the heavenly Tao could not produce the same number of saint positions. There were only 9 saint positions. One more would not do. Putting aside the changes in the boundless starry sky for the time being, Hongming's incarnation had once again stepped into the unknown Western aristocratic family as his realm stabilized. Moreover, before heading to that world, Hongming's incarnation had also captured a wisp of the power of the Great Path from his main body. The power of the Great Path belonged to the power of the Great Path. It was eternal and immortal, transcending the cycle of reincarnation. Feng Zichin wanted to see if the Nirvana Qi that could truly kill primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian could erode this wisp of the Great Path's power of the eternal level. If it could, then it would be terrifying. However, Feng Zichin did not think that it was possible. How could it be called eternal if it could be destroyed by the Nirvana Qi? Hongmeng Qi could devour the power of the Great Path because both belonged to the eternal level. If the Nirvana Qi could destroy the power of the Great Path, wouldn't it mean that even the Great Path could not be eternal? That was too ridiculous. Because of the previous coordinates, Feng Zichin did not have to go through so much trouble to rush to the Western world. With a thought, he crossed the layers of void and arrived outside that world. He was not in a hurry to enter. Feng Zichin activated the Great Path's power and found the Nirvana Qi drifting outside this world. He tentatively touched it. This was the true return to the source. Other than the eternal and indestructible Great Tao, nothing could escape from this, unless one transcended the cycle of reincarnation and achieved eternity. Pangu wanted to prove the Great Tao because he didn't want to die under the samsara tribulation. Before the samsara tribulation, all living beings were equal. Whether it was the high and mighty chaos fiend celestials or the lowly ants, they couldn't escape death. However, how could the chaos fiend celestials be willing to die like ants? Therefore, they began to struggle. They tried their best to improve their strength in order to become an existence like the Great Tao. This was the origin of the original cultivation path, for transcendence and also for survival. So this power of the end is the product of the samsara tribulation? Looking at the power of the end in front of him, Feng Zichin's face was full of surprise and uncertainty. This power of the end was indeed in line with the description of the samsara tribulation. Under the Great Tao, any power would be annihilated and turned into nothingness in front of it. However, if this was the product of the samsara tribulation, why didn't it annihilate the Western world in front of it and turn it into nothingness? Thinking of this, Feng Zichin was stunned. Then, ecstasy appeared on his face. He understood everything. He finally knew why the primal chaos fiend celestials were secretly spying on this place. Because this world indeed contained great fortune that was related to eternity. There was only one possibility for something that could not be destroyed by the samsara tribulation, and that was that it contained eternal matter, making it difficult for the power of the end to annihilate it. If Feng Zichin guessed correctly, this world that he had never heard of should be a relic left behind from the previous samsara. In the previous samsara, this world should have been incomparably powerful and had already touched the level of eternity. However, before this world could truly transform into an eternal world, the samsara tribulation erupted. This world, like the chaos, walked towards annihilation and turned into nothingness. However, this world was extraordinary after all. It had already nurtured part of the eternal matter, so this world was not completely destroyed. There were still some fragments that survived the samsara realm and came to the next samsara. Then endless years passed. For some reason, this world unexpectedly had a connection with the untainted land and began to slowly move in the direction of the untainted land. As for Feng Zichin's disciples, Feng Jie and the other two, perhaps by coincidence, were accidentally swept into this world and their whereabouts were unknown. As for the primal chaos fiend celestials, they should have gotten the news of this world from somewhere, so they wanted to sneak into this world through the untainted land and plunder the fortune here. Unfortunately, at the last moment, the primal chaos fiend celestials' plan had an accident. The fortune that he had discovered was robbed by Feng Zichen. Fate was really unpredictable. Eternity. Looking at the world in front of him, Feng Zichen's eyes gradually became firm. He wanted this world. The fortune that belonged to eternity could only belong to him. Eternity, even Pangu was pursuing it. How could Feng Zichen not be tempted? Taking advantage of the fact that no one had discovered this world, he had to get this world as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the news of this world leaked out and more people discovered it, Feng Zichen might not be able to compete with the primal Chaos Fiend Celestials. Fortuitous opportunities were not something that belonged to whoever discovered them. Instead, it would only belong to whoever got their hands on it. However, although he was in a hurry to get this world, Feng Zichen did not rashly enter it. He still had to study the Qi of Termination. Otherwise, if he was tricked by someone and fell into the Qi of Termination, he would lose a layer of skin even if he did not die. This world had been with the Qi of Termination for so long. Feng Zichen did not believe that the creatures in this world had not developed a method to use the Qi of Termination. The Qi of Termination could even kill primal chaos Daluo Jinxian. It could be said to be a great killing weapon. Who could resist the temptation of such a killing weapon? Even if they knew it was dangerous, there were still many people who were willing to take the risk. What Feng Zichen needed to do now was to use the transformed Hongmeng Qi to adapt to the Qi of Termination so that it would have the ability to compete with the Qi of Termination. At the same time, in the boundless starry sky of the untainted land, Feng Zichen's original body began to condense Hongmeng Qi at all costs. He was refining Hongmeng Purple Qi to help Hongmeng. Hongmeng Purple Qi was the foundation of the Great Way and also the origin of Hongmeng. It was a power on the same level as the power of the Great Way. If Feng Zichen had a Hongmeng Purple Qi, he would not be afraid of the Qi of Termination in this world. Time passed bit by bit. 10 years later, under the repeated condensation of the Qi of Termination, the quality of the Hongmeng Qi in Feng Zichen's body became higher and higher. As the purple Qi circulated, there was a faint burst of purple light. It was extremely mysterious. Such a Hongmeng Qi was no longer afraid of the corrosion of the Qi of Termination. Moreover, if the quantity of Hongmeng Qi was more than 10 times that of the Qi of Termination, Feng Zichen was even confident that he could devour the Qi of Termination. Although the quality of the Qi of Termination was high, Feng Zichen's Hongmeng Qi had devoured the power of the Great Way. Its quality was not low either. Chapter 895. If it was condensed a little, it would not be weaker than the power of the end and would have the power to fight against it. As a power at the eternal level, even if it had not reached the great accomplishment stage, the Hongmeng Qi was still a trump card. This Qi of the end is so mysterious. If someone can master it and use it to destroy the chaos, it might be possible to achieve the eternal realm. After condensing the Hongmeng Qi, Feng Zichen had a deeper understanding of the Qi of the end. He felt that this was also a way to reach the eternal realm. He could imagine a scene. In the depths of the endless chaos, there was a supreme deity who set off the nirvana tribulation and destroyed the entire chaos. In this scene where everything turned into nothingness, only he existed eternally and was not affected by the tribulation. Wasn't this a manifestation of eternity? Thinking of this, Feng Zichen's mind became more and more picturesque. Then he suddenly realized that perhaps, in a place he did not know, there was indeed such an expert. Every time the end of an era came, the nirvana tribulation would be set off. The more he thought about it, the more Feng Zichen felt that it was very possible. At the same time, another bold guess appeared in his mind. After reincarnation, was there really no one who completely understood the reincarnation great way and jumped out of reincarnation to achieve the eternal realm? Perhaps, as early as that unknown era, there was already someone who controlled reincarnation and lived eternally. Of course, this was all Feng Zichen's guess. It might not be true. After coming back to his senses, Feng Zichen collected his thoughts and turned to walk into the world. Whether or not someone achieved the eternal realm, it had nothing to do with him. It was more important for him to take care of himself. Decay, dead silence, no hope. Feng Zichen came in a hurry last time and did not carefully sense this world. Now that he carefully sensed it, he found that the world was filled with the aura of decay, giving people a feeling of lethargy. It was like a group of old men who were about to die and would not live long. Sigh, this world seems to have survived the reincarnation tribulation, but it has paid an unimaginable price for it. It has exhausted all its potential and is on the verge of collapse, with no possibility of recovery. Now, the reason why this realm still existed was because of the eternal substance in the realm. Once the eternal substance disappeared, this realm would be destroyed and completely disappear. The further in he went, the more Feng Zichen discovered that the situation in this world was shocking. The final qi affected every aspect of this world. In this world, the lifespan of a mortal was extremely short. Basically, it was only 60 to 70 years. The lifespan of a cultivator was not as long as Feng Zichen imagined. Celestial immortals only had a lifespan of 5,000 years. Shan immortals could live for 50,000 years, and golden immortals could not live forever, only having a lifespan of 560,000 years. Dao, Lord Tai, could live forever, but he couldn't touch the qi of the end. Otherwise, he would still die. Moreover, many connate Daos in this world had been corroded by the final qi and could not be cultivated. If one were to forcefully cultivate these innate Daos, the higher one's cultivation level, the faster one would die. This was a piece of good news. The fewer connate Daos that could be cultivated in this world, the more it meant that this world's cultivation world was narrower and could not produce any experts. But at the same time, Feng Zichen also discovered a piece of bad news. This world was moving unswervingly toward the untainted land at an extremely slow speed. This was truly a calamity. The final qi was indestructible. It would grow stronger and stronger as it devoured more and more power. What did this mean? It meant that if this world was really connected to the untainted land, then the final qi of this world would surge toward the untainted land and devour the entire untainted land, causing the untainted land to end up like this world. This world was a huge source of pollution. It could turn other worlds into the same state as it was. Therefore, these worlds could not be allowed to get close to the untainted land. This world had to be destroyed. Otherwise, even if the untainted land was not destroyed, it would enter the age of Dharma ending. Suddenly, Feng Zichen thought of the earth in his previous life. Wasn't it the age of Dharma ending? No, the age of Dharma ending? Originally, Feng Zichen thought that it was the result of the natural degeneration of the untainted land. But after sensing the situation of this world, he felt that he seemed to understand something. The earth's degeneration should have nothing to do with the untainted land itself. It was this world that crashed into it, causing the final qi to descend into the untainted land and drag the entire world into the age of Dharma ending. And because the untainted land shared the pressure, the living beings of this world were freed. They called themselves the God race and settled down in the untainted land. It was a very reasonable guess. Feng Zichen felt that he had most likely touched the truth of the decline of the untainted land in his previous life. It was related to this world. After all, there had been no major calamities in the untainted land since the journey to the west. Moreover, the journey to the west was a deal between the saints. It might affect the human race, but it did not affect the untainted land. If that was the case, why did the untainted land decline inexplicably after the journey to the west? The answer was here. After the journey to the west, this world crashed into it. First, it destroyed the 3,000 worlds that were still being nurtured. Then, after accumulating enough power, it swallowed the untainted land. This world was a source of disaster. For the future of the untainted land, it could not be left alive. He thought about how he had worked so hard to create the untainted land into what it was today. Moreover, he was about to obtain the position of celestial emperor that he had planned for countless years. Under such circumstances, if the untainted land was dragged into the abyss by this world, Feng Zichen would definitely go crazy. Therefore, this world had to be destroyed. No one could stop his determination to destroy the world. Originally, Feng Zichen was still thinking about how he would deal with himself if he refined the eternal matter of this world and caused the destruction of this world. But now, Feng Zichen was not worried about this at all. What was the use of keeping a world that was the source of disaster? Moreover, any world that was unfavorable to the untainted land should be destroyed. This was not a matter of right or wrong, but a matter of standpoint. Being born in the untainted land, one had to have such a standpoint. Anyone who was unfavorable to the untainted land should be destroyed. Feng Zichen was thinking as he hurried forward. Soon he arrived in front of a city. This was a city with the characteristics of the human clan. It was set up with an innate formation that connected the heavenly cycle star power and the earth veins in all directions. At first glance, one could tell that this was a method that Feng Zichen often used when he was young. Compared with the traditional style of this world, it was out of place. Zichen City. This was the name of this city. Well, it had the same name as Feng Zichen. Obviously, this city was related to Feng Zichen. It was a city that was established by his 3 disciples. It was named Zichen to commemorate Feng Zichen. Chapter 896. How considerate of you! With this thought, Feng Zichen walked into Zichen City. Speaking of which, his purple hair and purple eyes did not match the residents of the city. However, it was normal for cultivators to have some abnormalities. Purple hair was nothing. There were even green-haired cultivators. As long as Feng Zichen's aura that belonged to the divine demon clan could not be faked, he would not attract too much attention when he walked in the city. In this world, the divine demon clan was an outsider after all. They were suppressed by the natives of this world. The special environment also made the divine demon clan unusually united. As long as they cultivated the divine demon path, they were a family. There was no need to be guarded. Walking on the wide street, Feng Zichen seemed to feel something. His expression suddenly became strange. He realized that there were many living beings in this city who had the blood of Feng Jie flowing in their bodies. Although Feng Zichen had not seen Feng Jie for a long time, Feng Jie was also from the Feng clan. He was from the same clan as Feng Zichen. He could not have mistaken the Feng clan's bloodline. Such a strange situation undoubtedly indicated that these people were the descendants of Feng Jie. Thinking about it carefully, there was nothing strange. After all, Feng Jie had left the untainted land for tens of millions of years. It was not strange for him to have a family. Feng Zichen did not speak along the way. He came to a magnificent building. In his perception, his 2 disciples were here. Yes, 2, not 3. He wondered where the other disciple was. When the surrounding guards saw Feng Zichen, a person of unknown origin, they quickly surrounded him and asked, "Who are you?" Feng Zichen did not speak. He only silently released his aura. At the same time, in a majestic temple inside the building, a middle-aged man and woman suddenly opened their eyes. The middle-aged man and woman raised their heads and looked at each other. A look of surprise flashed across their eyes. They said at the same time, "This aura, it's master." After speaking, the 2 figures disappeared from the hall. When they reappeared, they were already outside the hall in front of Feng Zichen. The middle-aged man and woman looked at the familiar figure in front of them, and an indescribable excitement flashed in their eyes. Then they stepped forward and bowed. "Unfilial disciple Feng Jie, Zhang Hui, greets master." After being separated for countless years, they finally met again. Even with Feng Zichen's cultivation, his Tao heart still rippled. Feng Zichen quickly stepped forward and helped Feng Jie and Jiang Hui up. He said with some self-blame, "It has been hard on you all these years." Feng Jie and Jiang Hui were indeed suffering. This could be seen from their appearances. The two of them had already reached the realm of the primordial Taoist priests. Logically speaking, they should be able to stay young forever. Looking at their appearance, they looked older than Feng Zichen, which was a sign of mental and physical exhaustion. The appearance of a cultivator was related to his mentality. When his Tao heart was old, he would also be old, no longer as vigorous as when he was young. Feng Jie and Jiang Hui were like this. They were clearly overwhelmed by life. After exchanging greetings with the two, Feng Zichen suddenly asked, "Where's Jiang Xiong? Why don't I see him?" Hearing this, Jiang Hui's eyes turned red. She said with some self-blame, "It's all my fault. In order to save me, my brother was plotted against by the Angel Clan's Holy King. He had an accident and is now recuperating in the Temple of Life." Oh, Feng Zichen nodded and didn't say anything. But in his heart, he had sentenced the Angel Holy King to death. Daring to hurt his disciple, he was really courting death. Then, Feng Zichen asked about the two's recent situation. As he guessed, the three of them were accidentally involved in the Realm Sea. Then, they finally reached the realm of the Taoist priests in the Realm Sea and were about to return to the untainted land. But who would have thought that on the way across the void, they would accidentally lose their way? When they found the way out, the three of them had already arrived here in a daze and couldn't find their way back. It's my fault that I came in a hurry and didn't bring anything. Otherwise, I would definitely give you a big gift. But I'll remember it for now. When I return to the untainted land, I will give you a big gift. Looking at Feng Jie and Jiang Hui in front of him, Feng Zichen said with some regret. Feng Jie was indeed married. He married Jiang Hui, and the witness was Jiang Xiong. After going through so many difficulties and dangers, the two of them finally came together. It was also a beautiful story, but it was a pity that Feng Zichen came in a hurry and didn't bring anything. He couldn't give his two disciples a wedding gift. The two of them hurriedly said, "It's already a sin that we didn't tell Master that we got married. How dare we ask for a gift?" Pointing at Feng Jie, Feng Zichen said with a smile, "It's not urgent. Let's talk about it when we return to the untainted land." The two of them didn't ask when they would return to the untainted land, because when they saw Feng Zichen, they knew that it was inevitable that they would return to the untainted land. Then, the two of them called their several children over and paid respects to Feng Zichen, their grandmaster. Feng Jie and Jiang Hui had a total of 3 children, all of whom were outstanding. The eldest son had already reached the realm of Taoist priests. Such talent was first class in the untainted land. The other 2 sons were not bad either. Although they hadn't reached the realm of primordial Taoist priests, they were not far away. If they returned to the untainted land, they would be able to prove their Taoism after some practice. As for Feng Jie and Jiang Hui, they had already reached the realm of perfection of Taoist priests. If it weren't for the restriction of this world, they would have entered the realm of sage-to-be. Glancing at the 3 sons of Feng Jie, Feng Zichen praised them. They are all good children. Even in the whole human tribe, there are few who can be compared with them. Speaking of this, Feng Zichen's tone changed, and he said helplessly, "It's a pity that I didn't bring anything with me this time. I can't even take out a greeting gift." This was really Feng Zichen's mistake. His incarnation had been focused on cultivation, and he didn't care much about worldly things. Therefore, he had nothing but the Hongmeng sword in his hand. The 3rd son said, I don't dare." The younger generation didn't need it, but Feng Zichen had to give it to them. He secretly remembered this in his heart, and decided to make up for it when he returned to the untainted land. After chatting for a while, Feng Zichen proposed to see Jiang Xiong. The 2 of them didn't have any objections. They gladly accepted the order and took him to the fane of life. Feng Zichen didn't ask why Jiang Xiong was recuperating in the Fane of Life. There were only two reasons. One was that Jiang Xiong had an old relationship with the Fane of Life. The other was that Feng Jie had paid a huge price. But looking at Feng Jie, Feng Zichen estimated that the second possibility was unlikely. It should be the first one, that Jiang Xiong had something to do with someone in the Fane of Life. The Fane of Life? When he heard this name, the first thing that came to his mind was the goddess of life. There were many stories. Feng Zichen was not a gossipy person. If Feng Jie and the others didn't say, he didn't ask. This kind of thing, after a long time, he would naturally know. Chapter 897. The Temple of Life was located in the north of this world. It was a huge forest known as the Forest of Life, where the elves lived. The goddess of life was the deity that the elves believed in. However, according to Feng Jie, the goddess of life he was going to take Feng Zichen to wasn't the first goddess of life, but her descendant several generations later. The most ancient goddess of life was incredibly powerful, far beyond the realm of primordial chaos, and even more powerful than many chaos demon gods. Unfortunately, even such a powerful existence had fallen in that calamity that destroyed the heavens and the earth. The next few generations of goddesses of life were eroded by the gas of death because they broke through to the sage-to-be level and thus died. The previous goddess of life also died because she forced herself to break through to the sage-to-be level. The current goddess of life had learned her lesson. Although she already had the strength to break through, she still resisted. Feng Jie and Jiang Hui were in the same situation. They were really pitiful. They could break through to a higher realm with just a thought, but because of the threat of death, they couldn't break through. This feeling must be extremely torturous. On the way to the Temple of Life, Feng Zichen also learned a lot about this world. First of all, the cultivation system was completely different from the primordial world. The cultivation levels in this world, from high to low, were apprentice, mage, demigod, lower god, middle god, superior god, sky god, master god, ancestor god, creation god, supreme god among them. Lower god was equivalent to heaven immortal of the primordial world. Sky god was equivalent to Khanate Tao Lord. Master god was equivalent to Khanate Taoist priests. Ancestor god was equivalent to sage-to-be, and creation god and supreme god were respectively equivalent to primordial chaos and Wuji, Daluo Jinxian. As for higher realms, according to the inheritance of this world, there must have been, but they were all destroyed in history. In addition, Feng Zichen also learned that the situation of the mortals in this world was extremely worrying. Once, Feng Zichen thought that the primordial world already valued one's background and birth very much, but until he came to this world, he realized that he was wrong, very wrong. Compared to this world, the primordial world didn't value one's background and birth at all. At the very least, you can slowly become stronger and improve your background through your hard work in the primordial world, such as cultivation. He could even turn karma into karma and become an innate god. But in this world, from the moment one was born, one's fate was determined. The descendants of mortals could only be mortals. As for the descendants of the gods, they were still gods. As for cultivation, there was no such thing. Your bloodline will determine your future accomplishments. For the descendants of demigods, the highest level of accomplishment will be the demigod level. As for the descendants of sovereigns, they could easily become sovereigns. It was a terrifying world. Mortals could only be mortals. They had to be enslaved by God forever and serve God for the rest of their lives. Even if they were chosen by the gods and ascended to heaven, they could only exist as servants of the gods and not as gods. Similarly, gods were gods, forever high and mighty. They oppressed mortals, enslaved them, and enjoyed their service. As for the magic and Do Qi and Feng Zichen's memories of his previous life, they did not exist at all. They should not have been created yet. In this world, Xiantian determined everything. There was no way to advance postnatally. It seemed to be blocked by a powerful rule. Yes, that was it. An extremely powerful existence had changed the rules of this world, making it impossible to advance postnatally. This rule was engraved in the origin of this world, and no life could violate it. The existence who set this rule seemed to be abnormally powerful. Even though he had fallen for countless years, his power did not weaken at all. Even Feng Jie and Jiang Hui, who came from the outside world, were affected by the rules of this world. However, it didn't matter. The blood of Nuwa flowed in the human's body, and the blood of Pangu flowed in the Nuwa's body. According to this, the human was Panga's descendant. The blood of Pangu flowed in the bodies of Feng Jie and the others. Although the rules of this world affected them, it would not affect their breakthrough. After all, Pangu was a half-step, great Tao realm existence, and the upper limit was there. It was just that this world was abnormally ancient and had once produced people who far surpassed the chaos demon god. However, no matter how strong they could only be on par with Pangu. Looking at it this way, the bloodlines of Feng Jie and the others were also top-notch in this world, and there were very few who could be on par with them. As for Feng Zichen, the rules did not affect him. After all, he had the Hongmeng Dao body, and his potential was limitless. His bloodline was even more powerful than Panga's, and he was on par with the great Tao. How could he be affected by the rules? It's really a world full of oppression and without any hope. As expected, it's better for such a world to be destroyed. After understanding the situation of this world, Feng Zichen was even more determined to destroy this world. In this hopeless world, destruction was its final destination. At the same time, Feng Zichen also guessed why there were no magic, dou qi, or other cultivation systems suitable for humans in this world. Under the powerful rules, no progress was allowed at all. Even if there were such cultivation systems, mortals could not cultivate. Without a place to live, these cultivation systems naturally did not exist. As for why there were legends of magic and dou qi in the later generations, it was even simpler. It must be that after this world merged with the untainted land, its rules were broken, and the path of advancement was opened. With a place to live, those cultivation systems naturally appeared. What a world full of darkness! After a moment of silence, Feng Zichen and the others arrived at the Forest of Life. The Fane of Life was not the top in this world, but it could be called top-notch. Anyway, it was stronger than Feng Jie and the others. In this world, there were only two forces that could be called top-notch. One was heaven, which believed in God, and the other was the Church of Truth, which believed in the truth. In the past, there was the Fane of Destiny in this world. It was the top force in this world, and it deserved to be called the Overlord. Heaven and the Church of Truth were all ants in front of it. Unfortunately, the Fane of Destiny was destroyed by the Samsara tribulation and completely turned into ashes. That was how the God of Truth and God of God rose. Under these two overlords, there were more top-notch forces like the Fane of Life. For example, there were Asur gods, Warner gods, Olympus gods, Hell, giant dragons, goblins, dwarves, and so on. This was also the composition of the forces in this world. As for Feng Jie and the others, they were the most powerful ones among the second-notch forces. After all, they were outsiders. Not only did they have few people, but they also lacked a foundation. Feng Zichen and the others did not mean to hide their identities. Therefore, as soon as they approached the Forest of Life, the Goddess of Life in the Fane of Life had already sensed their arrival. She walked out of the Fane of Life and came to greet them in person. In the Forest of Life, Feng Zichen also saw the legendary creatures. They were indeed as beautiful as the legend said. If Feng Zichen had just come to the primeval world, he might have lost his composure when he saw such a beautiful elf. But now, beauty could no longer shake his heart. Not to mention, in Feng Zichen's heart, the beauties of the elf race were not even as good as the beauties of the Shura race, let alone the goddesses of the primeval world. Like the elf race, the Shura race was also full of beauties. None of the women of the Shura race were ugly. Of course, only the female Shura. There was no need to mention the male Shura. After waiting for a while, a beautiful goddess with long green hair and prominent facial features came to Feng Zichen and the others. She was a typical Western beauty. As soon as they met, the goddess gave Jiang Hui a warm hug. "My friend, have you come to see me again?" It was obvious that Jiang Hui found it difficult to accept her enthusiasm. After the two exchanged greetings, Jiang Hui pulled her to Feng Zichen and introduced her to him. "This is my teacher and also my brother's teacher. He came from our hometown." Then Jiang Hui introduced her to Feng Zichen. "Master, this is Qin. She is a good friend of my brother and I." After introducing their identities, Jiang Hui also told him her purpose of coming. She wanted to see Jiang Xiong. After a while of greetings, Feng Zichen finally entered the Fane of Life and saw Jiang Xiong in a secret place. It was a lake composed entirely of the spring of life. Jiang Xiong was lying in it, using the life essence to suppress his deteriorating body. However, the effect of this was not very good. This could be seen from Jiang Xiong's appearance. The young man who used to be in high spirits was now old. He looked like a centenarian, and there was a decaying smell on his body. This was a sign that he was about to fall. Feng Zichen already knew how Jiang Xiong was injured. To be precise, Jiang Xiong was not injured. He only chose to break through to the Sage-to-be realm to save Jiang Hui. In this way, he successfully killed a strong enemy, but because of the breakthrough, he was eroded by the gas of the end and gradually decayed. The spring of life in the Fane of Life had a suppressive effect on the gas of the end. Therefore, Jiang Hui sent Jiang Xiong here. A secret method to seal his life? Seeing Jiang Xiong's motionless appearance, Feng Zichen naturally recognized that he had used a secret method to seal his true spirit to avoid the erosion of the gas of the end. Under this secret method, Jiang Xiong looked like a rotten tree. In fact, with the spring of life, he could definitely survive for tens of millions of years. The price was that he would fall into a deep sleep as if he was completely dead. Stupid idea. Feng Zichen commented on Jiang Xiong's choice. If he encountered such a situation, his first choice would be to abandon his physical body, true spirit, cultivation, and even everything, leaving only one thought. By doing so, he could escape with his life, but his cultivation would be gone, and he would have to cultivate from the beginning. The so-called Daluo Jinxian was a joke in front of the gas of the end. He was someone who could even extinguish one's cultivation. He could even kill the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. So what if he dropped his realm? However, although cultivation was important, it was obviously not as important as life. He could cultivate again if his cultivation was gone, but if he lost his life, it would really be gone. Therefore, Feng Zichen said that Jiang Xiong was stupid and did not know how to choose. This was easy for him to say. How could he give up billions of years of cultivation so easily? "Jiang Xiong, wake up!" Feng Zichen stepped forward gently and used a magical power to wake Jiang Xiong up. The next moment, the sleeping Jiang Xiong opened his eyes. At first, he was confused for a moment. Then he saw Feng Zichen. Excitement flashed in his eyes. Jiang Xiong struggled to get up and saluted Feng Zichen. Chapter 898. Feng Zichen stepped forward and held Jiang Xiong down. "Don't move. Let me heal you first." As he spoke, the Hongmeng Qi around Feng Zichen surged and poured into Jiang Xiong's body. Obviously, Feng Zichen wanted to use his own Hongmeng Qi to wash away the Qi of termination in Jiang Xiong's body. Feng Zichen had already tested it before. As long as there was enough Hongmeng Qi, which was several times more than the Qi of termination, it could definitely wipe out the Qi of termination. Rumble. Hongmeng Qi surged out of Feng Zichen's body. It was like a great river, mighty and endless. It washed over Jiang Xiong's body again and again, wiping out the qi of termination in his body. However, although the momentum was great, the effect was not obvious. Jiang Xiong was already in the realm of sage-to-be. He was one level higher than Feng Zichen's Hongming incarnation. Therefore, the spiritual power in Jiang Xiong's body was far more vast than Feng Zichen had imagined. His plan to use the amount of Hongmeng qi to wipe out the qi of termination in Jiang Xiong's body was obviously not going to work. This was because the qi of termination in Jiang Xiong's body was much more than Feng Zichen had imagined. It was far more vast than the Hongmeng qi in Feng Zichen's body. Fortunately, although there was a lot of qi of termination, it was a rootless source. Every bit that was wiped out was a bit less. However, Feng Zichen's Hongmeng qi was endless. As time passed, it could always wipe out the qi of termination. Time flew. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. 3 years was enough for Feng Zichen to wipe out part of the qi of termination in Jiang Xiong's body. Jiang Xiong's spirit had recovered a bit. Feng Zichen was very dissatisfied with this. If this continued, it would take him at least thousands or even tens of thousands of years to completely wipe out the qi of termination in Jiang Xiong's body. How could he have so much time to waste here? Compared to Feng Zichen's dissatisfaction, the goddess of life, who had been watching this scene from the side, was dumbfounded. He was a native of this world, so he understood the aura of destiny better than Feng Jie and the others. He knew that there was basically no cure for this aura. Even experts above primordial chaos could not escape death if they touched it. Jiang Xiong had been infected by the qi of doom. It could be said that he would definitely die. It was only a matter of time. But for some reason, he didn't want to see Jiang Xiong die, so he brought him into the spring of life to prolong his life. It was only to prolong Jiang Xiong's life, not to save him. It was clear that the heavenly life goddess no longer held any hope that Jiang Xiong could survive. But just now, what did he see? Under the treatment of Jiang Xiong's mysterious master, the qi of destiny in Jiang Xiong's body was slowly decreasing. Oh my God! Ancestor god of life, there's actually someone in this world who can suppress the aura of doom. This scene brought great shock to the heavenly life goddess. It was as if her long-held understanding had been completely shattered. Unlike the heavenly life goddess, Feng Jie and Jiang, we didn't think too much. They were simply happy that Jiang Xiong could be saved. After some time, Feng Zichen felt that this couldn't go on. With a thought, he suddenly took out the Hongmeng purple qi that he had specially condensed before coming to this realm. At the time, Feng Zichen had condensed the Hongmeng purple qi just for insurance and peace of mind. He hadn't expected that this thing could save his disciple's life. Although the aura of destiny was strong, it was still no match for the Hongmeng purple qi. As long as the Hongmeng purple qi was integrated into Jiang Xiong's body, he would immediately be able to resolve his crisis. You got lucky. Glancing at Jiang Xiong, Feng Zichen took out the Hongmeng purple qi and was about to refine it into Jiang Xiong's body. However, when Jiang Xiong saw the Hongmeng purple qi, his expression changed drastically. He frantically struggled and shouted, "Master, you can't! This is the Hongmeng purple qi, the foundation of the Great Path. It's related to the opportunity to become a saint. How can you use such a precious treasure on your disciple?" Absolutely not. Knowing the preciousness of the Hongmeng purple qi, how could Jiang Xiong dare to accept this opportunity that could allow him to become a saint? This was the most precious treasure that all powerful people in the untainted land dreamed of. It was the key to becoming a saint. How could such a precious treasure be given to others? Thinking about it, even with his master's means and wisdom, he had paid an unimaginable price to obtain this Hongmeng purple qi. The more this was the case, the more Jiang Xiong could not accept this Hongmeng purple qi. This was the opportunity for his master to become a saint. It could not be wasted on him. Feng Zichen did not know that Jiang Xiong had already imagined a fierce battle for the Hongming Qi. He was afraid that the untainted land would be destroyed. On the side, Feng Jie and Jiang Hui were shocked when they saw Feng Zichen take out the Hongmeng purple qi to save Jiang Xiong. Immediately, their expressions changed drastically, and they became extremely conflicted. They were worried about Jiang Xiong's safety, but they did not want to see Feng Zichen lose a Hongmeng purple qi. They were really conflicted to the extreme. As for the goddess of life, although she did not know the origin of the Hongmeng purple qi, she knew that it was an unimaginable treasure when she saw their expressions. At the same time, she also knew that it was a treasure that could deal with the qi of the end. Looking at the expressions of the three, Feng Zichen knew what they were thinking. He was both gratified and amused. Perhaps in their eyes, their master had not yet become a saint. Right? How could a saint leave the untainted land so easily? Feng Zichen smiled and patted Jiang Xiong. He stopped him and said, "Brat, you have already cultivated to the sage-to-be realm. Are you still in the Taoist priest's realm when you become your master?" "I have already cultivated to the origin, Tao, fruit, countless years ago. This Hongmeng purple qi is no longer useful to me. It is a good thing for you." Then, ignoring Jiang Xiong's resistance, Feng Zichen forcibly refined the Hongmeng purple qi into Jiang Xiong's body. It was worthy of the name of the great Tao. As soon as the Hongmeng purple qi entered Jiang Xiong's body, Jiang Xiong's state began to change visibly. His body became young again, and the qi of the end dissipated rapidly. A few months later, Jiang Xiong was cured of his illness and came back to life. Furthermore, it was 30% stronger than before. It was a pity that the Hongmeng purple qi had been consumed by more than half. Without exchanging pleasantries with the recovered Jiang Xiong, Feng Zichen followed the goddess of life to the forbidden area of the Fane of Life. It was a wonderful world. Here he saw the goddesses of life of the past who had long been declared dead. This was probably the biggest secret of the Fane of Life. As for why they asked Feng Zichen to come, it was most likely related to Jiang Xiong's recovery. An expert who could deal with the qi of the end was worthy of their meeting, because although they did not die, their situation was obviously not good. They were all in a state of suspended animation. If Feng Zichen had not disturbed them, they would not have woken up at all. Eternal matter? As soon as he entered the forbidden area of the Fane of Life, Feng Zichen knew why these goddesses of life who should have died did not die. Chapter 899. Everything was related to the eternal matter here. That's right. Feng Zichen felt the existence of some eternal matter in the forbidden area of the Temple of Life. Although it wasn't much, it was enough to suppress the qi of destiny in the bodies of the living beings here. Suppressing, but not solving, it showed the lack of eternal matter here. An old voice suddenly sounded in Feng Zichen's ears. "Expert from another world, the Temple of Life welcomes you." Feng Zichen looked up and saw 3 old men, all of whom were sage-to-be, lying quietly in 3 wooden coffins. Those wooden coffins! Instead of responding to the voice that suddenly appeared, Feng Zichen focused his gaze on the 3 wooden coffins. The eternal matter here was emitted from the wooden coffins. The world tree. That's right, the 3 wooden coffins were made of the branches of the world tree. Feng Zichen had been with the world tree all year round, so he couldn't be wrong about its aura. It wasn't the world tree of this reincarnation, but the one from the previous reincarnation. Its strength was far superior to Feng Zichen's world tree. Even if it couldn't be compared to Pango, it wasn't far behind, as it had also reached the half-step eternal realm. But such an existence still fell in the reincarnation tribulation. His eyes flickered for a moment, and Feng Zichen finally recovered from the shock. He greeted the 3 people in the coffins, Poor Wei, Pango, Zichen clan from the Eldritch world. "Greetings, fellow Taoists." Feng Zichen was not surprised that the 3 of them were able to see through his background. His aura was incompatible with this world. Anyone who wasn't blind could see that he wasn't from this world. The Eldritch world, a world I've never heard of. After sighing, the old voice continued. When fellow cultivator Zichin came in, he focused his gaze on the ancestral tree. There was a sense of familiarity in his eyes. Could it be that you know the ancestral tree? Foam Zichin nodded and replied, It is indeed familiar. There is a divine tree in the primordial era that is very similar to your world ancestral tree. However, cultivators in my world call it the world tree. World tree. The ancient voice paused for a moment before continuing. My world was created by the ancestral tree. Therefore, it can also be called the world tree. At this point, the old voice suddenly began to recount the history of the world. Countless eons ago, the ancestral tree took root in the chaos. As its roots spread out, it created this world. As the ancestral tree grew, this world grew larger and larger. The founder of the Temple of Life, the first god of life, was a being born of the ancestral wood. Most of the founders of the other clans were the same. They were all born of the ancestral tree. However, there were some creatures that were exceptions. They were born in the chaos and first lived under the ancestral tree. However, as this world was created, they naturally became the creatures of this world. There was no impatience on Foam Zichin's face. Instead, he was interested as he listened to the history of this world. These were all things that he did not know. It was also the past of the previous reincarnation. Of course, he was curious. After an unknown period of time, the old voice finally finished talking about the history of this world and stopped. At the same time, a gaze fell on Foam Zichin, as if anticipating something. Just as Foam Zichin was curious about the history of this world, the people of this world were also curious about the history of the Eldritch world. There was nothing to hide. Foam Zichin said directly, Compared to your world, the Eldritch world does not have such a long history. It was born in this samsara tribulation and was formed by the great god Pango splitting the chaos. Splitting the chaos? The voice was a little excited. He exclaimed, What a terrifying expert! He can even split the chaos. Nodding, Foam Zichin said in agreement, The great god Pango is indeed very strong. He can be called the most powerful person in the chaos. He is the strongest existence under the great Tao. He is one step away from entering the eternal realm. This was clearly telling the other party that there was a supreme expert in the Eldritch world. If he had any thoughts that he should not have, he should get rid of them as soon as possible. Hearing this, the other party was speechless for a long time. After a long while, he said, With such an expert in the Eldritch world, can he solve the hidden dangers of our world? Foam Zichin shook his head and said, No, your world has been destroyed long ago. It is just relying on the eternal substance to barely survive. Unless the great Tao personally intervenes, it is useless for anyone to come. The other party was not disappointed. Obviously, he already knew the answer. He just continued to ask, Then, do you have the ability to solve the hidden dangers in our bodies? This time, Foam Zichin did not disappoint them. He nodded and said, If you pay a huge price, you can indeed get rid of the hidden dangers in your bodies. You should have seen it just now. It is the power that the poor Wei used to save her disciple. It is called the Hongmeng Purple Qi. It is the foundation of the great Tao. It is the most precious treasure in the world. Even the Qi of the end cannot damage it at all. After chatting for a long time, they finally got to the point. The reason why the 3 former life goddesses called Foam Zichin over was not because of the Hongmeng Qi in his hands. Although the coffin made by the world tree could suppress the Qi of the end in their bodies, it could not solve the hidden dangers in their bodies. Otherwise, they would not be aging day by day. After a long time, they would also die. Therefore, they had their eyes on Foam Zichin. They wanted to ask for a wisp of Hongmeng purple qi from him to solve their hidden dangers. Another old voice sounded. It directly asked Foam Zichin, Do you have any other Hongmeng purple qi in your hands? It was time for the transaction. Feng Zichen said, Poor Wei does not have any Hongmeng purple qi in her hands for the time being. However, she has a lot in the untainted land. If you can take out suitable treasures, Poor Wei is willing to be the middleman and exchange for 3 wisps of Hongmeng purple qi for you. Feng Zichen did not lack Hongmeng purple qi. Every 1,000,000 years, he could create a wisp of Hongmeng purple qi. After a moment of silence, another voice said, Fellow, if the Temple of Life leaves this world, will the untainted land accept it? Hearing this, Feng Zichen did not answer immediately. Instead, he began to think seriously. It was not a big deal to let the Temple of Life join the untainted land. However, why? You are an outsider. Firstly, you have no merit. Secondly, you have no contribution. What right do you have to enter the untainted land? What right do you have to join the untainted land? Therefore, after a moment of silence, Feng Zichen shook his head and refused. I'm afraid that's not possible. Moreover, even if Poor Wei agrees, it's useless. I'm not the only one who has the final say in the untainted land. Feng Zichen lied. He, who was about to become a celestial emperor, was actually qualified to let the Temple of Life join the untainted land. It was just an outsider. If he joined the untainted land as his vassal, no one would refuse him. Chapter 900. However, Feng Zichen had no reason to do so. At least, the fane of life was not worth it. The 3 people were not surprised by Feng Zichen's refusal. They continued, Qin and your disciple, Jiang Xiong, are in love with each other. If they get married, you and I will be in-laws. In this way, can you let the fane of life go to untainted land? The 3 people had a good plan. If they had no relationship with Feng Zichen, they would like to see how Feng Zichen could refuse. Feng Zichen smiled and said, It's right to help in-laws. After all, they are a family. But don't you think it's too much for you to have a family? Speaking of this, Feng Zichen said seriously, It's okay to take care of in-laws, but there is a limit. If Qin and my disciple get married, they can be regarded as people of untainted land. In this way, the Poor Wei can make the decision to bring her immediate family into untainted land. As for the rest, the Poor Wei can't do anything. Another voice came from the void with a little helplessness. You are right. This request is indeed too much. However, the 3 people obviously did not give up the opportunity to enter untainted land. They continued, If we can give you a benefit, can you let us integrate into untainted land? This time, Feng Zichen did not rush to refuse. Instead, he asked, What is the benefit? Tell me. If it's really valuable, the Poor Wei still has some face in untainted land. Hearing this, the voice was silent for a moment before continuing to speak. However, he did not answer Feng Zichen's question. Instead, he asked him, Do you know why my world has not been destroyed in this situation? Hearing this, Feng Zichen's heart moved. Did he ask this question because he knew where the eternal substance was? Thinking of this, Feng Zichen suddenly became excited, but his expression did not change. He replied in a normal tone, Of course I know. Your world should have eternal matter. It is this thing that maintains the existence of this world, preventing it from being destroyed by the gas of the end. From the void of space, the voice replied, That is indeed the case. Within the world's origin, there exists a mysterious purple light, and it is because of its existence that our world is able to exist for so long. Speaking of this, the voice paused and then said what he wanted to hear in Feng Zichen's excitement. The benefits we want to give you are related to this. If you are willing to help us integrate into the untainted land, we will tell you where the origin of heaven and earth is. The eternal substance was Feng Zichen's goal here. The life goddess was willing to make a deal with him with the whereabouts of the eternal substance. One could imagine how excited Feng Zichen was. Before entering this world, Feng Zichen had used countless methods to try to find the whereabouts of the origin of this world. Unfortunately, without exception, he had failed. The origin of this world had been hidden by someone with great magic. No matter how hard Feng Zichen searched, he could not find it. He had no choice but to take the risk to enter this world. Otherwise, Feng Zichen would have directly taken action outside the world and left after taking the thing. There was no need to go through so much trouble. Although he was excited, Feng Zichen did not let it get to his head. Instead, he asked calmly, "Since you three know where the origin of heaven and earth is, why don't you go and get the eternal substance yourselves? You should know that since that thing can protect your realm from destruction, it will naturally be able to solve the problem in your body." Feng Zichen suspected that there should be some danger in the place where the origin of heaven and earth was. Otherwise, the origin of heaven and earth would not have been preserved until now. It would have long been taken away and devoured by the masters of this world who were on the verge of death. The three life goddesses did not hide anything and said bluntly, "The place where the origin of heaven and earth is located is indeed a bit dangerous. However, that is only for the cultivators of our world. It may not be so for you." Then the three of them told Feng Zichen why they could not go to the origin of heaven and earth. First, those who are contaminated by the qi of the end could not get close to the origin of heaven and earth. If they forced themselves to get close, they would definitely be killed by the power of heaven and earth. Although this world was not going to survive, it had once been glorious. Under the full power of heaven and earth, no one in this world could stop it. Second, and the most important, was that there was a vast and boundless nirvana ocean in the periphery of the origin of heaven and earth. The experts of this world might still have a way to dodge the former, but the latter, that vast and boundless nirvana ocean, was something that no one could pass through. Throughout the history of the world, countless people had gone to the Sea of Nirvana to fight against the heavens before they died, wanting to fight for a future. Unfortunately, they all failed and died in the Sea of Nirvana, mercilessly annihilated there. The Nirvana Ocean? If there was enough Hongmeng purple qi, Feng Zichen was confident that he could pass through. Perhaps he could not use the Hongmeng purple qi. He could try using Panga's power. After all, the great god Pango was a half-step into the eternal realm. His power more or less had a trace of the eternal nature. Perhaps he could block the Nirvana Ocean for a while. However, although he was confident, Feng Zichen did not show it on his face. He frowned and said, "If it's just this information, although valuable, it's not enough for the Shrine of Life to move to the untainted land. In addition, even if the three of you don't tell Poor Wei the whereabouts of the origin of heaven and earth, as long as she is given time, she can also find the whereabouts of the origin of heaven and earth." However, with Feng Zichen's ability, he could also find the whereabouts of the origin of heaven and earth after staying in this world for tens of thousands of years. The goddess of life was not angry. She continued, "We naturally believe in your ability, but so what if you find the origin of heaven and earth? The origin of heaven and earth has been jointly set up by God and the God of truth. Once someone goes there, they will sense it. In your current state, I'm afraid you are no match for them. The Temple of Life, on the other hand, has a special channel that allows us to enter the origin of heaven and earth without alerting them. So, are you still not willing to cooperate with us?" To be honest, Feng Zichen was tempted. The God of Truth and God of God were the strongest in this world. He had used some unknown means to mobilize the power of heaven and earth in this world, and thus had the power comparable to the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. In Feng Zichen's current state, if he encountered them, he would definitely be defeated. Therefore, Feng Zichen basically agreed to the goddess of life's request, but he still had a question. After thinking for a while, Feng Zichen said, "Poor Wei still has a question. If you can solve it, I will agree to your request." The goddess of life replied solemnly, "What question?" Please tell me. Chapter 901. If the poor way takes away the eternal substance, this world will inevitably be destroyed. Do you guys really not care at all? This was what Feng Zichen was most confused about. After all, this was the world that gave birth to them. If it was destroyed just like that, would their hearts really not be affected at all? At this time, the helpless voice of the life goddess sounded. Fellow Taoist, if you stay in this world for millions of years, you will also be like us, wishing for it to be destroyed immediately. After hearing what she said, Feng Zichen understood a little. These three were probably tortured by the environment of this world. No matter how deep their feelings were, it was difficult to resist such erosion. Not to mention that going to the untainted land could let them live. People, no matter how high their cultivation was, were all selfish. Then another voice said, As for the creatures of this world, since the beginning of our world, there have been more than hundreds of millions of races. Now, there are only so many left. Fellow Taoist, do you think this is all a natural disaster? In order to compete for the resources of this world, our world has been in constant war all year round. It can be said that there is a deep blood feud between the races. If they all die in this world, it can be considered as revenge for our ancestors. Feng Zichen had nothing to say. The life goddess really had no place to stay in this world. Thinking about it, if Feng Zichen was born in this world, he would also find a way to leave. Nodding, Feng Zichen said, Poor Wei already knows what you want. In the untainted land, Poor Wei will also be responsible for the arrangements. But how to cut off the connection with this world is your own business. Poor Wei has no ability to intervene. Heaven and earth gave birth to you and raised you. Now that it is dying, you want to leave just like that. How can there be such a good thing? You must pay the price. However, that was when the world was at its peak. If it was in this world, it was not too difficult to cut off this connection. When the world was about to be destroyed, it was the best way to escape, and there was no need to pay any price. After all, the world was destroyed. He didn't have the extra energy to fuss over those fleeing lives. However, there was a prerequisite for that. One had to have the cultivation level of primordial chaos, Daluo Jinxian, and transcend the river of time and space. Otherwise, they could only follow the world towards extinction. After Feng Zichen said that, the life goddess immediately replied, That's only right. The Church of Life has long been prepared. It's not difficult for us to leave this world. Feng Zichen was not surprised to hear this. From the previous conversation, he knew that the Temple of Life had once produced a great figure. Although he was not as good as Pango, he could be considered a well-known figure among the Chaos Demon gods. Such an existence could help the Church of Life leave this world with just 1 or 2 backup plans. Next, the life goddess told Feng Zichen the location of the origin of heaven and earth as promised. Feng Zichen, on the other hand, made an agreement with them. After the poor Wei takes away the eternal substance, she will take all of you away. After the agreement was made, Feng Zichen left. After telling Feng Jie to go back and prepare to return to the primordial world, Feng Zichen rushed in the direction of the origin of heaven and earth according to the coordinates sent to him by the life goddess. It was no wonder that Feng Zichen could not find the origin of heaven and earth in this world. It turned out that it was not in this world at all, but in a broken world. This was also a part of that world, but it was destroyed by the reincarnation tribulation. It was no wonder that the origin of heaven and earth was hidden here. After traveling in this world for a while, Feng Zichen saw a huge light curtain from afar. According to the life goddess, this was left behind by the strongest people in this world, the god of truth and God. Its purpose was to prevent anyone from getting close to the origin of heaven and earth. Feng Zichen quietly went forward to confirm and found that the life goddess was right. This was left behind by the 2 people. If he rashly went in, he would definitely be sensed by the two people. After thinking about it, Feng Zichen went around this place and walked toward the secret passage told to him by the life goddess. It was left behind by the first-generation life goddess. It could have led directly to the origin of heaven and earth. But because of the reincarnation tribulation, half of the passage was destroyed. He could only come close to the origin of heaven and earth, but could not enter it. According to the method passed down by the life goddess, Feng Zichen searched in the void for a long time and finally found the passage. It was not called a passage, but a section of the world tree's roots that seemed to extend from the origin of heaven and earth. Yes, the origin of heaven and earth in this world was the world tree's roots. After all, this world was derived from the world tree, so the origin of heaven and earth should be the world tree. Using the wood escape technique, Feng Zichen merged with the world tree's roots and flew in the direction it extended from. Whoosh! In an instant, Feng Zichen had already traveled hundreds of thousands of miles. Soon he arrived at the end of the world tree's roots, in front of a vast nirvana ocean. He could see that at the end of the nirvana ocean, a vast mass of colorful light was blooming with bright light. It was like the sun, shining in all directions. That was where the origin of heaven and earth of this world was. Faintly, Feng Zichen saw strands of purple flowing light in the depths of the colorful light mass, exuding an indescribable charm. Without a doubt, that was the eternal matter. It was a power that was higher than the Hongmeng purple gas and was comparable to the origin of great Tao. As for the origin of chaos, it was worthless like dirt in front of him. Very good. The life goddess did not lie to me. At this moment, Feng Zichen really felt that this trip to the Temple of Life was not in vain. If he did not go to the Temple of Life, how could he find such a secret passage and come here quietly? Indeed, Feng Zichen was confident that even without the help of the Temple of Life, he could still obtain the eternal matter of this world. However, if that was the case, he would have to collide with the strongest in this world, and who knew how much trouble would occur. He would not be like now, quietly coming here to take away the eternal matter, which would save him a lot of trouble. No one liked to use 100% of their strength for something that could be done with 10% of their strength. Now, the eternal matter was right in front of him. The only obstacle was the nirvana ocean in front of him. The nirvana force passed by silently and destroyed all matter, causing the world to return to a state of nothingness. With such power, Feng Zichen was sure that if he fell into it, he would be annihilated by the nirvana force after a few minutes at most. Not daring to take the risk, Feng Zichen secretly used a divine ability to contact his main body and asked him to continue creating the Hongmeng purple gas. At the same time, he sent over a Panga's power. That was the power of Panga's Dharma form that was formed with the three realms as the foundation. Chapter 902. In the distant Eldritch world, after great Emperor Ziwei received the news from his avatar, he began to speed up the process of creating the Hongmeng purple qi. In an instant, the great masters of Eldritch world felt that the chaotic vital energy gushing out from the boundless starry sky had suddenly decreased by half. As time passed, it continued to decrease. Soon, only 1/10 of the primal chaos yuan qi was left. The 90% of the chaotic vital energy that disappeared was naturally intercepted by Feng Zichen and used to create the Hongmeng purple qi. All the great cultivators also knew that the only person who could do this was great Emperor Ziwei. But even if they knew, they couldn't stop it because this array formation was built by him. Even the heavenly Tao couldn't interfere, let alone them. No matter what great Emperor Ziwei did, they couldn't do anything but watch. Feng Zichen intercepted 90% of the chaotic vital energy in an instant. This was equivalent to him using the power of the entire Eldritch world to condense the Hongmeng purple qi for him. In this way, the speed at which he condensed the Hongmeng purple qi increased by many times. In about 1,000 years, he would be able to condense a strand of Hongmeng purple qi. However, although this method was good, it couldn't be used often. It was fine if it was used occasionally, but if it was used for a long time, the backlash from the heavenly Tao was something that even great Emperor Ziwei couldn't withstand. After all, Feng Zichen's action was completely using public resources for his own personal use. He used the power of the eldritch world to seek benefits for himself. Once in a while, with his contribution to the eldritch world, the heavenly Tao could turn a blind eye. But if he did it often, it would affect countless living beings and involve countless karma. The consequences of doing this were obvious from the fate of the demon clan. The demon clan that once dominated the heaven realm had yet to recover their vitality. The reason was that they intercepted the power of the stars and formed a great karma with all living beings in the heavenly Tao. Rumble. While condensing the Hongmeng purple qi, Feng Zichen didn't forget to mobilize the power of Panga's Dharma idol and began to condense the power that belonged to Pangu. How to condense it? It was quite simple. He just had to continuously refine the power of the Panga Dharma idol, turning it into a single strand and returning it to its source. The quantitative change would lead to a qualitative change, thus restoring the true power of the Panga Dharma idol. Of course, this would take time. Hongmeng, who was in the ocean of nirvana, knew that this matter could not be rushed. Thus, he stood before the ocean of nirvana and ceaselessly studied the power of nirvana. He attempted to study its essence in order to grasp this power. This was not impossible. Hongmeng's qi was known as the source of all things. It was the embodiment of the concept of being. Everything that existed in the world, regardless of its function, was derived from Hongmeng's qi. Although the nirvana qi was domineering, it could not escape this category. It was also a power evolved from Hongmeng qi. Since it evolved from Hongmeng qi, Feng Zichen had hopes of comprehending and mastering it. According to his guess, this nirvana qi was the manifestation of Hongmeng qi at its limit. Hongmeng qi gave birth to all things, and the nirvana qi destroyed all things. One of these two represented the beginning, and the other represented the end. It was a cycle. If he could comprehend the essence of the nirvana qi, it would be no less than an epiphany for Feng Zichen. It would allow his comprehension of Hongmeng qi to reach a higher level. Just like that, time passed bit by bit. When Feng Zichen woke up from his meditation, it was already 2,000 years later. It was also at this moment that the void in front of Feng Zichen suddenly shook, like layers of ripples on the surface of the water. Then, very suddenly, a purple Hongmeng qi and a purple Panga qi appeared in front of him. These two were the results of the great of Ziwei in the past 2,000 years. In the end, he had underestimated the difficulty of creating the purple Hongmeng qi. It wasn't the expected 1,000 years, but rather 2,000 years. Only then did he manage to condense a strand of primordial aura. However, this was enough. First, he put away the purple Hongmeng qi. Feng Zichen turned his gaze to the Panga qi. Feng Zichen was no stranger to Panga qi. After all, he often used Panga qi in his early years. To put it bluntly, most of the power that dissipated between heaven and earth after Panga's death was consumed by him. Reaching out his hand, Feng Zichen absorbed the Panga qi into his body without any hindrance and skillfully manipulated it. It was as if this was not Panga qi's power, but a power that belonged to him. After condensing a shadow of Mount Buzhou outside his body with the Panga qi's power, Feng Zichen stepped into the sea of nirvana. Sensing the arrival of a foreign object, the surrounding power of the ground suddenly boiled and crazily surged toward Feng Zichen, wanting to engulf him and completely destroy him. Pressure. At this moment, Feng Zichen felt an unprecedented pressure. It was like countless years ago when he first met Dong Huang Tai. The feeling of not being in control of life and death once again struck his heart. However, Feng Zichen was not afraid because the Panga qi in his body gave him enough courage. At this moment, he was like a small boat in a storm, in danger of capsizing at any time. However, no matter how turbulent the surrounding power of Nirvana was, it could not break through the defense of the Pangachi's power and hurt Feng Zichen, who was inside. However, as Feng Zichen continued to go deeper, gradually, the shadow of Mount Buzhou outside his body became much more illusory. I'm not the great god Pango after all. I can't unleash his power to the limit, so I can't completely block the power of Nirvana. Otherwise, how can a mere sea of Nirvana stop me? Feng Zichen had already expected that the Pangachi's power could not block the power of Nirvana. Even if he controlled the Pangachi's power perfectly, he was still not the great god Pango, and this was his fatal flaw. However, this did not affect Feng Zichen's plan because in addition to the power of the Pangachi, he also had the Hongmeng purple qi. Wisps of Hongmeng purple qi gushed out of his body and merged into the shadow of Mount Buzhou outside his body. In an instant, the shadow of Mount Buzhou became solid again. The real Mount Buzhou descended. Not only did it block the erosion of the power of Nirvana, but it also suppressed the boiling sea of Nirvana, causing it to return to calmness. In this way, Feng Zichen stepped across the sea of Nirvana step by step and arrived at the origin of heaven and earth. It was a withered tree stump. It was unimaginably huge. There were countless growth rings on the tree body. It was hard to imagine how many years this ancient tree had experienced. This was the origin of this world. It was the world tree that was born in the previous reincarnation. It had experienced countless years and had already grown to the half-step eternal realm. It dominated the entire untainted land and was far from the world tree in Feng Zichen's hands. Chapter 903. This should be the complete world tree. Its divine might is boundless and infinite. It's enough to support a world that's even stronger than the primordial world. It's a supreme world with part of the eternal matter. Looking at the decaying world tree, Feng Zichen was filled with emotions. He originally thought that after cultivating the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian and wiping away the long river of time and space, he would be truly immortal. But now, looking at it, he was still too naive. Even a supreme existence at the half-step eternal level could fall, let alone a mere primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Primordial chaos was not safe. The samsara tribulation was too terrifying. Only by truly achieving eternity could one be truly free and unfettered. Sighing in his heart, Feng Zichen stepped forward, carefully avoiding the power of Nirvana on the tree stump, and walked towards the center of the tree stump. There, a sparkling purple divine light flowed, blooming with a mysterious color. If Feng Zichen's guess was correct, that was the eternal matter of this world. It was also the foundation of this world's existence, the eternal source. It's really beautiful. Looking at the purple stream of light in front of him, Feng Zichen's eyes showed a long-lost intoxication. The beauty of the eternal source could not be described with words. All the beautiful adjectives in the world were not enough to describe it. It was a true treasure that no one in the world could compare to. He saw that around the purple stream of light, countless power of Nirvana surged, but it could not get close to this place. The power of Nirvana was afraid of the eternal divine might. This was the true eternal matter, the origin of the great path. Even the Hongmeng purple gas was far from being comparable to it. The Hongmeng purple gas was said to be an eternal matter and was not afraid of the power of Nirvana. However, if it was thrown into the sea of Nirvana, with the passage of time, it would eventually be completely destroyed by the power of Nirvana. However, this eternal matter would not. It was truly eternal. No power in the world could damage it in the slightest. It had the property of being indestructible. Even if it was thrown into the sea of Nirvana, it would only be the sea of Nirvana that would be destroyed, not the eternal source. Very good. Very good. Coming back to his senses, Feng Zichen's intoxicated look was replaced by excitement. How could he not be excited? These eternal substances would be the foundation of his path. As long as he could refine it, even if he couldn't reach the eternal realm, he would be able to step into the half-step eternal realm. This was the ticket to eternity. After a long while, Feng Zichen finally calmed down his excited mood. Then he began to refine the eternal source in front of him. Although Feng Zichen had found the eternal source, it was not easy to completely refine it. How could it not disappear quickly? When this world was destroyed, Feng Zichen saw several streams of light rushing out of the collapsing world and escaping toward the chaos. Oh, this world's foundation is really deep. There are so many forces that can escape the calamity of destruction. Seeing this scene, Feng Zichen could not help but exclaim in surprise. Those streams of light were naturally the various forces of this world. It could only be said that, as expected of a world that had produced a supreme powerhouse, its foundation was really deep. Even if it was so cowardly, it still did not lack treasures. At this moment, among the several streams of light, one of them flew in the direction of Feng Zichen according to the guidance of the unseen. Whoosh! The divine light fell and turned into a temple in front of Feng Zichen. It was the Temple of Life. The life of the Temple of Life, as well as the descendants of Feng Jia, were all inside. Leave the eternal source. Before Feng Zichen could exchange pleasantries with them, two violent shouts suddenly came from the chaos. Then, two divine lights broke through the chaos and arrived. It's the God of God and Truth! The previous goddess of life exclaimed, recognizing the origin of the two divine lights. Feng Zichen did not retreat. Instead, he clenched his fist and punched out, a domineering fist intent that swept across the universe and crushed the heavens spread out, shattering the two divine lights and revealing the true appearance inside. It was two figures with divine halos above their heads. They clearly emitted a holy and auspicious aura, but they gave people a feeling of superiority. The God of God and Truth, the strongest person in this world. Chapter 904. You too, what is this? Feng Zichen asked knowingly as he looked at the two powerhouses in front of him. Foreigner, the eternal source is the treasure of our world. We can't let you take it away, God, who is shrouded in a divine halo, said in a deep voice. Beside him, the God of Truth didn't say anything, but judging from her attitude, she obviously had the same idea as God. What if I don't keep it? Feng Zichen didn't bother to pretend and asked lazily. If the Western world hadn't been destroyed, Feng Zichen might have been afraid of them. But now, the Western world had been destroyed, and these two had lost their greatest reliance. They couldn't mobilize the power of heaven and earth and exert the power comparable to the origin. Their realm was comparable to Feng Zichen, and they were both at the limit of the Taoist priests. How could they be a match for Feng Zichen? Even if they broke through and became sage-to-be, they couldn't. Although Feng Zichen was a Taoist priest, without the interference of the qi of the end, he could mobilize the power of his original body at any time and burst out the power comparable to the origin. If these two fought with him, they would be courting death. Kill. Seeing Feng Zichen's attitude, the two immediately understood that it was impossible for him to hand over the eternal source. At that moment, the two didn't hesitate and directly attacked Feng Zichen. Be careful! Beside Feng Zichen, the former goddess of life hurriedly reminded him when she saw this. She used her magical power and was ready to help. But before she could do anything, a purple long sword suddenly appeared in Feng Zichen's hand, and he slashed at the two of them. Whoosh! The sword light flashed, and as if it had surpassed time, it appeared in front of the two of them and split them in half. Successful in one strike, Feng Zichen wasn't excited. Instead, he frowned. The sword didn't feel like it had hit anything, which meant that the two of them had dodged it. Just as he was thinking about this, he saw the two halves of the figure suddenly disintegrate into light spots that filled the sky and dissipated. The power of faith. I underestimated you. Feng Zichen turned his gaze to another part of the primal chaos. There, a figure shrouded in divine light quietly appeared. Yes, one, not two. The two supreme experts who dominated the Western world were actually the same person. One was the main body, and the other was the divinity used to receive the power of faith. Now that the world was destroyed and everything was gone, there was no need for the two of them to hide their identities. They merged into one and broke through the limit to become Sage to Be. No, it was not just Sage to Be. After breaking through to Sage to Be, his power continued to grow. Soon, he broke through to the middle stage of Sage to Be. Moreover, it did not stop there. It was as if there was no end to it. It wanted to break through to the realm of the primordial Daluo Jinxian. For such a situation to occur, there was no doubt that God had not been idle all these years. Although he was unable to break through to the quasi-sage realm and enter a higher realm, he was still able to do so. But he was still storing power to make plans for the future. Now, after the world was destroyed, the shackles on God's body were all removed. The power he had stored before could be put to use and constantly raise his realm. If not for his previous accumulation, it would not have been so easy for God to break through. After all, after the world was destroyed, the place where Feng Zichen and the others were was in the boundless primal chaos. A mere Daluo, Taoist priest wanted to break through here. He was simply courting death. The violent primal chaos could destroy him on the spot. Back then, the reason why Feng Zichen could break through in the boundless primal chaos was that he had the help of the chaos bead, which could suppress the primal chaos. Therefore, he dared to break through without worry. God was breaking through at this time using the power he had accumulated before, not by swallowing the primal chaos. Therefore, he was not in danger. Otherwise, there was no need for Feng Zichen to make a move. He would be dead. So confident that you dare to break through in front of me. Do you really think I won't dare to make a move? Seeing that God was breaking through in front of him as if there was no one else around, Feng Zichen first smiled slightly, and then he slashed down with his sword. At this time, Feng Zichen's swordsmanship had already broken away from Panga's influence. When the sword slashed down, it was no longer the Tao of splitting the heavens, but the power of great destruction. It wanted to destroy all things and make them return to Hongmeng. After comprehending the power of destruction for thousands of years, he was not completely without gains. Under the constant comparison with the Hongmeng purple gas, he had mastered some of the power of destruction. This allowed his understanding of the Hongmeng Tao to reach a higher level. This sword was the result of Feng Zichen's years of hard work. Whoosh! Wherever the sword light passed, even the primal chaos was destroyed. It then evolved into Hongmeng and became a part of the sword light, strengthening the power of the sword. Boom! 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 The closer the sword light got to God, the stronger it became. By the time it reached God's side, it was twice as powerful as before. Rise, heaven! The moment the sword light touched God, he finally reacted. Pure, white divine light erupted from his body. It was incomparably sacred and gradually formed a divine kingdom. Angels roamed within, believers praying devoutly. It was like a perfect kingdom. This was the end of the Tao of faith and the perfect kingdom that existed in the imagination, the eternal divine kingdom. However, God was far from reaching this level. Not only him, but no one who cultivated the Tao of faith had ever reached this height. Therefore, the eternal divine kingdom only existed in the world of celestials. Right now, God was unleashing the kingdom he had spent his entire life to create, heaven. As soon as heaven opened, Feng Zichen's sword momentum was immediately obstructed. The angels in heaven fought desperately to block it. One by one, the angels threw themselves at the oncoming Hongmeng sword light like moths to a flame. They did all they could to delay its advance and buy time for God to break through. It was because of these angels' reckless actions that the speed of Hongmeng's sword light was indeed affected. It didn't immediately cut through heaven, but instead became entangled with the angels and believers inside. Feng Zichen only watched in silence. Though the sword's momentum was obstructed, it didn't affect its power. On the contrary, as more and more angels were slain, Hongmeng's sword light grew stronger and stronger. If the primordial sword radiance was allowed to destroy the heavenly hall, the sword's power would increase to a frightening level. Even if God successfully ascended to the Origin Dao realm, it would be able to kill him with a single strike. However, Feng Zichen obviously wouldn't let God break through. Above and below the Tao of Origin realm were two completely different concepts. The former was immortal and indestructible, while the latter was coexisting with heaven and earth. The difference was too great. If God broke through to the Tao of Origin realm, even if he was killed by Feng Zichen, there was still a chance for him to be resurrected in the future. Therefore, he couldn't let God break through to the Tao of Origin realm. Even so, Feng Zichen still didn't stop God from breaking through because he wanted to see God's trump card. Chapter 905. As a remnant of the supreme world in the past, God's means were an eye-opener for Feng Zichen. Soon, God's power reached the limit of the sage-to-be, half a step into the primordial chaos. Then it stopped advancing. But even so, it was amazing enough. In a short time, God had advanced from the limit of Daluo Jinxian to the limit of the sage-to-be. This cultivation speed was extremely fast. Even though Feng Zichen was experienced and knowledgeable, it was the first time he had seen someone cultivate so fast. God had really surprised him. After reaching the limit of the sage-to-be, God felt that he could crush Feng Zichen. He suddenly stepped forward and made a rumbling sound, which made the chaos tremble. I said, "Let there be light." Rumble. A ray of bright and holy light suddenly appeared in the chaos, dispelling the darkness and bringing light to the world. The light had incredible power, as if it could split the world. In the blink of an eye, it broke through the boundless chaos and appeared in front of Feng Zichen to kill him. Very good. Seeing this, Feng Zichen smiled slightly and struck out with his palm. The endless universe was born and died in his hand. The mighty and terrifying power collided with the divine light that was rushing toward him. As a result, Feng Zichen was knocked back and his right hand was penetrated by the divine light. This was normal. The power of Feng Zichen's Hongmeng incarnation was only the limit of the Taoist priests. Compared to God, it was a whole realm lower. It was already amazing that he could survive a blow from God. What more could he ask for? To defeat God, who was a whole realm higher. How was that possible? After Daluo, no one could defeat an opponent who was a whole realm higher without the help of external forces. The Chaos Demon God couldn't, and neither could Feng Zichen. God didn't show any mercy. He made a sound again, which made the chaos tremble. Those who believe in me and love me will live forever. Those who resist me, those who disobey me, they will all be destroyed. They will all sink into oblivion. As soon as he finished speaking, a mysterious, and indescribable power suddenly crossed the boundless time and space and descended upon Feng Zichen. It wanted to drag him into the abyss of death and sink him into eternal oblivion. At the same time, chaos began to reject Feng Zichen as if he had committed a heinous crime and wanted to banish and destroy him. This is the Fortune Shrine's great prophecy technique. Didn't this ability disappear along with the destruction of the Temple of Fate? How did you learn great prophecy? Where did you learn it? At this moment, The goddess of life of the previous generation actually let out a cry of surprise when she saw God unleash this divine power. Clearly, she had recognized the origin of this divine power. The great prophecy technique was a peerless divine ability of the Temple of Fortune. Feng Zichen knew that the Temple of Fortune was the most powerful force in this world. It was a well-deserved overlord who ruled this world in the last reincarnation. The owner of the Temple of Fortune, the great god of fortune, was the existence who controlled the fate of all the creatures in this world. He was supreme, and his status was equal to that of ancestor Hung Jun in the untainted land. However, the strength of the god of fortune was far beyond that of ancestor Hung Jun. He was an existence who was about to peep into eternity, and his strength was second only to that of God Pangu. Unfortunately, the entire Temple of Fortune, including this existence, had been destroyed in the tribulation of reincarnation. The divine power left by such an existence was naturally terrifying. The so-called Great Prophecy technique was to make all his prophecies come true through the endless power of faith, so that he could achieve the effect of his wishes. It was a bit similar to the untainted lands law, but more powerful. Rumble. Endless power came from all directions, the past, the future, and the endless dimensions, drowning Feng Zichen and obliterating him. Feng Zichen knew that with the power of his incarnation, he could not block the attack of the Great Prophecy technique. Therefore, he simply gave up resisting and allowed this force to destroy him. He wanted to use this opportunity to comprehend the true meaning of nirvana. If he wanted to comprehend the way of nirvana, was there anything faster than being destroyed once? Only by personally falling into nirvana, experiencing the feeling of being destroyed, and struggling back from nirvana, could he truly master the way of nirvana. Just like how could he know the horror of death if he did not die once? This move was risky, but it was the fastest way to comprehend the way of nirvana. Once he succeeded, it would be better than countless years of hard work. What's more, how could there be no risks in cultivation? Cultivation was to fight against the heavens. If there were no risks, how could one achieve great success? Soon, Feng Zichen's body, soul, and true spirit were all destroyed by the power of God and returned to nothingness. Only the eternal source in his body was not destroyed and floated quietly in the void. On the other hand, Feng Zichen's will had fallen into an endless darkness with no end in sight, and this darkness was eating away at his will step by step. But in this endless darkness, there was a purple stream of light constantly flickering. It was like a bright light in the dark night, guiding Feng Zichen's way back. That was the eternal source, and it was also Feng Zichen's confidence that he dared to risk falling into nirvana. He knew that with the eternal source, he would not die no matter what. With the eternal source in front of him, God seemed very excited, but he did not have the chance to go forward. Because the Hongmeng sword light left behind by Feng Zichen had broken through the defense of heaven and arrived in front of him, wanting to destroy his vitality, true spirit, and everything. I said, I will not be hurt. I said, no power can hurt me. I said, all power that hurts me will disappear. The moment the sword light struck, God sensed danger and made several prophecies in a row, trying to block the sword. But it was useless. These prophecies, other than making the Hongmeng sword light more powerful, could not protect God at all. Whoosh! The moment the sword light struck, God suddenly took out an illusory but real gem that emitted hundreds of millions of colors and placed it between his eyebrows. Clang! The sword light struck the gem with the sound of metal clashing, but it did not hurt God at all. This sword, which was enough to seriously injure a primordial chaos expert, was blocked by this mysterious gem. This is the stone of destiny, the gem embedded in the scepter of destiny, the treasure of chaos, the embodiment of the mystery of the great Tao, the protection of destiny, an existence similar to the ancestral tree. Didn't it die with the great god of destiny? Why is it in your hands? The previous life goddess felt that she must be hallucinating. First, she saw the long-lost great prophecy technique, and now she saw the stone of destiny that should have been destroyed. It was really too shocking. Chapter 906. Sai. Long before the samsara tribulation erupted, the god of destiny foresaw his own fate. He was destined to perish in the tribulation. Although the god of destiny could control the fate of all living beings, he could not control his own fate. Therefore, he perished in the samsara tribulation. No matter what method he used, he could not survive. But how could an existence like him be willing to be manipulated by fate and accept the fate of perishing? He wanted to live and cultivate to the realm of eternity, so he wanted to resist fate. In his final moments, the god of destiny used his supreme divine ability to imprint a trace of his mark into the stone of destiny. Then he merged the stone of destiny into the heart of the world tree, attempting to use this method to escape the samsara tribulation. Unfortunately, he failed in the end. Not only did he perish, but even the world tree withered with him. The heart of the world tree was eroded by the power of nirvana and was completely destroyed. The stone of destiny and the mark of the god of destiny were also destroyed and completely disappeared. However, perhaps it was a gift from fate. At the moment when the stone of destiny was about to be completely destroyed, a ray of eternal light erupted and shone on the stone of destiny. Under the reflection of the eternal light, the stone of destiny avoided the samsara tribulation and was able to retain part of it. However, the mark of the god of destiny in the stone of destiny was severely damaged and lost all vitality. After countless years, I, the great god, was born. Carrying the will of fate, I was born under the illumination of the eternal light. I am the son of the god of destiny, so I have the inheritance of the temple of destiny and master the great prophecy technique. Similarly, I am the natural master of this world and am destined to rule this world. A grand voice came from God's mouth as if he was singing, telling the goddess of life his origin. According to his words, his status was indeed quite high. He was equivalent to the 3 pure ones of the primordial era, a natural saint. Goddess of life, since you know my origin, you should follow the guidance of fate and submit to me and become my most devout believer. God wanted to subdue the goddess of life and make her provide him with the power of faith to increase his strength. However, the goddess of life obviously did not fall for this. The goddess of life replied in a similarly grand voice, "The god of destiny, the natural master? How laughable! He is just a thief who steals the authority of heaven and earth and the fate of all living beings." Since when was it his turn to be the master of heaven and earth? Our ancestor, the great goddess of life of the first generation, the supreme deity who walked out of the world tree, was the true master of this realm and brought vitality to the world. At the same time, the previous goddess of life was also using her divine powers to attack God. In the Church of Life, Feng Jie and the other 2 were speechless. That world has already been destroyed, and you guys are still here fighting for the title of Orthodox. How boring. Although the former goddess of life was no match for God, she was still a pre-saint. In addition, she had 2 pre-saint helpers and the support of the Temple of Life. With all these powers added together, she might not be weaker than God. This time, the life goddess's side was truly suppressing the enemy with their overwhelming numbers. Sensing the danger, God steeled himself and swallowed the stone of destiny. You guys forced me to do this. I originally wanted to accumulate for a while more before breaking through. After eating the stone of destiny, God's stagnant aura grew again with an irresistible momentum toward the level of primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. There was no doubt that if no one stopped him, God would complete his transformation in a few hours at most and cultivate into primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. The Stone of Destiny, when placed in the current chaos, was equivalent to the origin of chaos treasures and the foundation of chaos treasures. It was like someone who swallowed supreme treasures, such as the Bell of Chaos and the Taiji diagram. Naturally, their strength would be greatly improved, and entering the realm of primordial chaos was nothing at all. Oh no, he's about to break through. Stop him. The reaction of the previous goddess of life was not slow. Seeing this scene, she directly blasted out the divine powers she had prepared, wanting to interrupt God's breakthrough. However, it was useless. Before the attack of the previous goddess of life could get close to God, it was blocked by the powerful aura emanating from his body. Seeing this scene, a hint of ruthlessness appeared in the eyes of the previous goddess of life. She knew that once God succeeded in breaking through, not only would the eternal source fall into his hands, but even everyone in the temple of life would be converted by him, lose their sense of self, and become his most devout believers. Therefore, the goddess of life decided to go all out. A jade green gem that was blooming with the luster of life appeared in her hand. This was the gem of life, a treasure on the same level as the Stone of Destiny. Since the god of destiny could leave behind the gem of destiny, the goddess of life naturally had a way to leave behind the gem of life. After eating the gem of life, even if the previous goddess of life could not enter the realm of primordial chaos, she could temporarily obtain the power of primordial chaos, and escape would not be a problem. As expected, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Even if this realm has experienced the samsara tribulation, there are still many good things left behind. In the deepest part of the void, an imposing figure had appeared at some point and was commenting on everything that had happened here. This imposing figure was enveloped in the radiance of human Tao. He wore a crown on his head, and the phantom of 10,000 spirits appeared. He wore a royal robe embroidered with 9 nine-clawed divine dragons that were bearing their fangs and brandishing their claws. They looked very lifelike, as if they could pounce out at any time. Above his head, there was a dazzling divine ring that bloomed with the radiance of human Tao, as if it was formed by the convergence of endless human Tao beliefs. That was the divine ring of human Tao, which symbolized the protection of human Tao and the blessing of all spirits. It could block any attack below the 3rd level of primordial chaos. This was an existence that was favored by human Tao. Who else could it be other than Feng Zichen? That's right, as early as when he obtained the eternal source. Feng Zichen's Gauchin clone had already left the primordial chaos and came here to hide in the dark. His purpose was to prevent accidents from happening. The eternal source was so important that it could not be lost. If it were not for the fact that his original body could not leave the boundless starry sky, the one who came here at this moment would be Great Emperor Zui, whose strength was infinitely close to Daluo Jinxian's. Just as God was about to succeed in breaking through, Feng Zichen finally made his move. Freeze! As soon as the word fell, the chaos responded. Endless power surged and acted on God's body, suppressing the momentum of his breakthrough. It was one of the supreme, divine abilities of the primordial world. It was a mighty figure who controlled the world and had the power to seize life and death. Chapter 907. Retreat. With another word, the boundless chaos trembled, causing the great Tao to resonate. It actually evolved the mighty power of time and space to act on God's body. In an instant, the power on God's body began to retreat, returning to the body of the gem of destiny. It was also at this time that Feng Zichen's imposing figure walked out of the void and appeared in front of everyone. Master! As soon as they saw Feng Zichen, Feng Jie, and the other 2 in the Temple of Life shouted in surprise. Feng Zichen, who had manifested as a human, was the master that Feng Jie and the others were familiar with. As for the Goddess of Life and the others, they were also very shocked. Although they knew that Feng Zichen was very strong, they still couldn't help but be shocked after seeing it for themselves. Smiling and nodding at them, Feng Zichen stretched out his hand and imprisoned God in front of him. At the same time, the gem of destiny that was swallowed by God also began to tremble violently. In the end, it directly pierced through God's body and flew out, landing in Feng Zichen's hand. The gem of destiny was the supreme treasure of the previous reincarnation tribulation. It was comparable to the chaos bead, Panga's axe, and other treasures. How could Feng Zichen not be curious? Since he had encountered it, he definitely had to get his hands on it and study it. Not in a hurry to study the gem of destiny, Feng Zichen put it away, then looked at God and said, "You are the supreme powerhouse of the previous reincarnation, the living being formed from the mark of the great God of destiny. To be honest, I am very curious about the great Tao of the previous reincarnation. It is definitely different from the current great Tao system. You are formed from the true spirit of the great God of destiny, so you must have inherited a part of the mark of the previous reincarnation. Therefore, I will not kill you. I will keep you alive so that I can spy on the mysteries of the previous reincarnation from you." As he spoke, Feng Zichen pressed down with his palm, directly suppressing and sealing God, who had no power to resist. With his current strength, an ordinary primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian could easily suppress him, let alone a cultivator like God who had not yet reached primordial chaos. After sealing God, Feng Zichen did not stop. Instead, he released his divine thought and spread it in all directions, shrouding the entire area of chaos. Withdraw. In the next moment, Feng Zichen used his divine power to capture all the nearby creatures and seal them together with his Dharma power. These were living beings who had escaped from the apocalypse after the Western world was destroyed. Logically speaking, when the world was destroyed, these living beings that had yet to reach the primordial chaos realm should have been destroyed along with the world. However, not only did they survive, but they also escaped into the chaos. This undoubtedly meant that they had treasures in their hands. It was with the power of these treasures that they were able to survive the apocalypse. It wasn't easy for Feng Zichen to come all the way here, so he couldn't take it back empty-handed. Since he had met them, he naturally had to collect them. These treasures were fated with him. These creatures were also fated with him. As living beings left behind from the previous reincarnation tribulation, their origins and body structure were definitely different from the living beings of the primordial world. That was the power of another system. By studying their origin marks, Feng Zichen might be able to come into contact with the mysteries of the great Tao of creation in advance. One had to know that the realm after Wuji Daluo Jinxian was called the ultimate realm of creation. Ultimate was the limit. At this realm, one had basically reached the limit of cultivation and had completely grasped the essence of creation. With a thought, one could create and destroy a world, create countless living beings out of thin air, and also destroy countless living beings. Of course, even the current Feng Zichen could do this. However, he couldn't turn an ordinary object into a connate spirit treasure with a thought. He could turn a connate spirit treasure into an ordinary object. What did that mean? In the hands of an expert of the ultimate realm of creation, any stone or branch on the ground could be transformed into a connate spirit treasure. This was the power to change the essence of things. With a thought, one could give all things unimaginable power. One could also deprive all things of their extraordinary power and make them mortal. With a thought, an expert of the ultimate realm of creation could even beat primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian into the mortal world. Although it couldn't erase his essence, it could make him lose all his power and live as a mortal. Not old, not dead, not destroyed. This was simply worse than death. Imagine a person a moment ago was still the high and mighty primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. In the next moment, he lost all his power and became immortal. This huge difference was enough to make one go crazy. More importantly, he wouldn't die. To mortals, this was a good thing. But to an existence who was once high and mighty, this was endless torture. The ultimate realm of creation was the pinnacle of cultivation and could be said to be omnipotent. If one improved further, one would turn into chaos. One would become chaos, containing everything and being omnipotent. Therefore, after the ultimate realm of creation was chaos, this wasn't a realm but a state. Chaos, 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 yin and yang, clear and turbid, be it opposing or unified, they were all mixed together. He had no end and no end. Therefore, those who cultivated to the chaos realm had no end or limit to their power. They had transcended all concepts and completely separated themselves from life and death. They were all chaos, so how could they talk about life and death? Chaos wouldn't die. The only thing that could defeat chaos was chaos. Chaos was the beginning of everything. If the ultimate realm of creation was the end of cultivation, then chaos was the end of all living beings. There was no way to advance. After cultivating chaos, one's power could continue to increase without a limit. If one wanted to improve, one could only transcend and reach the realm of nothing. Only then could one live forever. Yes, the realm of eternity was known as nothing. When one's strength reached this level, not only could one live forever, but they could also be omnipotent. What Pengu wanted to break through was the realm of nothing, but he couldn't understand this realm. Logically speaking, since he had cultivated to nothing, then nothing existed. How could he be eternal? Pengu didn't understand, so he failed to break through. He could only open up the primordial world, evolve the eternal world, and then prove the realm of eternity. Feng Zichen didn't understand either, but that was too far away from him. It wasn't something he should be thinking about. Now, what he should be thinking about was how to break through the realm of creation. Feng Zichen was already confident about the realm of Wuji Daluo and could break through at any time. But he still had no idea how to cultivate the ultimate realm of creation. But the countless living beings in this world gave Feng Zichen a shortcut. As long as he understood the true meaning of life of these living beings and compared it with the path of creation of the primordial world, Feng Zichen would be able to comprehend the essence of creation and break through to the ultimate realm of creation. The source of eternity was an opportunity. The living beings and Dharma treasures of this world were also opportunities. One was for the present, while the other was for the future. Chapter 908. In front of Feng Zichen, the remaining creatures in this world were suppressed and sealed by him without any resistance. Even the treasures left behind by their ancestors in the past were useless in front of powerful strength. In the vast Western world, there were 9 supreme temples, and a total of 9 origin gems were left. At this moment, except for the gem of life, the other 8 had all fallen into Feng Zichen's hands. Keep! With a wave of his sleeve, Feng Zichen took away the eternal origin and was about to leave with the temple of life. However, all of a sudden he frowned. He had sensed a wisp of life from the destroyed world. With a thought, Feng Zichen captured the wisp of vitality. When he held it in his hand, he saw that it was a crystal clear seed. Feng Zichen recognized the seed. It was the seed of the world tree, as expected of the existence that can support half of the eternal world. Even the reincarnation tribulation can't completely extinguish your vitality. Instead, you took the opportunity to be reborn and left a seed. Unfortunately, you have been eroded by the power of nirvana for too long. Even if you are reborn, you can't live. After studying it carefully for a while, Feng Zichen found that although the seed of the world tree still had vitality, it would never take root and germinate. This was the curse of reincarnation. It was destined to die. However, this thing was not completely useless. Merging this seed with the world tree of the untainted land would definitely make it undergo an unimaginable transformation. After that, The road to the half-step eternal realm would be smooth and smooth. There was even hope to see the eternal realm. Putting away the seed, Feng Zichen released his divine thoughts and carefully searched the chaos here again. After confirming that there was nothing left, he turned to Feng Jie and the other two and said to them, "Let's go. We will go to the untainted land." As soon as he finished speaking, the chaos changed. The power of time and space evolved and drowned everyone. What followed was a grotesque and variegated scenery. When Feng Jie and the others came back to their senses, they had already arrived at the edge of the untainted land, in the chaos outside the sky. Everyone looked up and saw the vast world surrounded by countless small worlds. Their hearts were full of shock. This was especially so for Feng Jie and the other two. They exclaimed in disbelief, "This is the primordial world? Why did he become like this?" After all, when they left, the great Magi-Demon War had not yet broken out, and the primordial world was still in the form of a primitive continent. However, is the primordial world still the same as before? It reigned supreme in the 3 dimensions and was protected by a myriad of worlds. It was even vaster and more powerful than it was in the past. Looking at his disciples' shocked look, Feng Zichen felt very proud. After all, it was his doing that made the untainted land what it was today. In the past, Pangu created the world. Today, Great Emperor Ziwei was here to change the world. Feng Zichen was not in a hurry to bring Feng Jie and the others into the 3 realms. Instead, he stopped in outer space as if he was waiting for someone. Feng Zichen did not have to wait for long. At a certain moment, he felt his mind go into a trance. Then he left his body and came to a mysterious and unknown space. This place was filled with the source of chaos as if there was no end to it. And in the source of chaos, there was an endless flow of mystery, blooming with Tao light. It was as if one could attain Tao with just a glance. In addition, Feng Zichen also discovered that in the deepest part of the space, there were actually wisps of purple air currents surging. At first, Feng Zichen thought that it was the Hongmeng purple qi. However, he soon realized that something was wrong. The purple qi actually carried the aura of eternity. The purple qi was not the source of eternity, but the source of the great path. It was also a power at the eternal level. This was the space where Pangu's will was located. It was Pangu who took action and brought Feng Zichen's will here. Only Pangu, the supreme existence, could condense the source of eternity. That's right. In the current primordial world, other than the great god Pangu, no one could quietly take away Feng Zichen's mind. Even the Tao ancestor couldn't do it in person. Although he didn't notice the existence of anyone, Feng Zichen felt that an indescribable gaze fell on him. He was very familiar with this gaze. It belonged to the great god Pangu. Bowing to the void, Feng Zichen said, "Zichen greets the great god Pangu." No one appeared, but a supreme will woke up and said in a loud and clear voice, "You have the aura of eternity and the aura of reincarnation. Where have you been?" Without hiding anything, Feng Zichen told Pangu everything about the Western world. In front of such an existence, there was no need to hide anything, because your thoughts couldn't be hidden from him at all. When he asked you, he naturally knew the answer in his heart. Therefore, lying and hiding were all meaningless. The world left behind from the previous reincarnation? You're so lucky to encounter such a world. It seems that it won't be long before you can cultivate to the end of the creation realm. The creatures left behind from the previous reincarnation are the shortcut to the end of the creation realm. Back then, when I was traveling in the chaos, I also found a world that had survived the reincarnation tribulation. It was because I studied the creatures there that I was able to cultivate to the end of the creation realm in the shortest time possible and leave a group of chaos demon gods behind me. Hearing Pangu's sigh, Feng Zichen wasn't surprised. Pangu was the son of the great Tao. The opportunities he had obtained along the way were absolutely unimaginable. Even Feng Zichen couldn't compare to him. He was a legend among legends, a myth among myths, and an existence regarded as a myth by immortals. Of course, Feng Zichen wouldn't be so naive to think that the previous reincarnation only left behind a broken world. How long was a reincarnation from the beginning to the end? It was unimaginably long. It was an indescribable period of time. And this reincarnation, with Panga's birth as the starting point, was only the beginning. No one knew how long it would take for it to end. Who knew that in the future, another world would rise up? This was something unpredictable. Often, after a reincarnation, there would be many worlds left behind for various reasons. Of course, these worlds were like a speck of dust in the universe, in the chaos. They were abnormally small. To be able to find such a world, one must be loved by the great Tao. Otherwise, one wouldn't have such strong luck. At this moment, Pangos spoke again. Feng Zichen, you're very good. Really good. You're better than I expected. Your appearance has brought too many variables to the primordial world. It has truly changed the future of the primordial world. Bringing you to the primordial world was my best decision. Chapter 909. Feng Zichen seemed very calm when Pangu talked about his origin. He had already expected that the reason why he could come to the untainted land was most likely related to Pangu. After all, in the untainted land, only Pangu could go against the flow of time. Moreover, there was no love without a reason in the world. When Feng Zichen was weak, Pangu often helped him. This was obviously unreasonable. He was neither the three pure ones nor the ancestor of sorcery. Why did Pangu treat him differently? The reason was that Feng Zichen was brought to the untainted land by him. In addition, Feng Zichen performed well, so he took care of him. Panga's words only confirmed Feng Zichen's guess. Of course, he was not surprised. However, although Feng Zichen guessed the result, he did not know much about the process and cause of this matter. In particular, he did not understand how the primordial chaos Tao Bell, a supreme treasure that was born from the primordial chaos, came to him. As if seeing Feng Zichen's doubts, Pangas said, I know you have a lot of doubts in your heart. Now that I've come to see you, I'll solve them for you one by one. Countless years ago, I had an epiphany in the chaos and decided to open the sky to prove my Tao. That was why there was the tribulation of opening the sky. However, after the opening of the sky and earth, I still did not see any signs of proving my Tao. Therefore, I separated a wisp of divine thought and followed the long river of time and space to check the future of the untainted land. The future is not fixed, so it is changeable. However, when one's strength reaches my level, he is infinitely close to omniscience and omnipotence. With a thought, no matter how many futures there are in the untainted land, I can sense them one by one. Then I found that all the futures in the untainted land eventually led to the same ending, which was to be destroyed in the immeasurable calamity. In other words, I failed to attain the Tao in the end. I didn't rely on the primordial world to attain the eternal realm. Naturally, I'm unwilling to accept this. I've paid such a great price, and even the body of the way that I've refined for countless years has been destroyed. How could I allow myself to fail? At that time, I knew that I had to make a change. I had to find an anomaly in the world to change the destiny of the primordial world. But how could it be so easy to find an outlier? I've been deducing for a long time, but I still haven't found one. In the end, I decided to create an anomaly. Hearing this, Feng Zichen could already feel Panga's domineering aura. Since there was no anomaly in the world, he would create one himself. Panga's continued. From then on, I began to use my magic to constantly search for the fated ones in the future. I pulled their souls back to the beginning of the world and tried to use them to change the fate of the untainted land. Unfortunately, without exception, they all failed. The destiny set by the great Tao cannot be changed. Basically, these people died for various reasons before they could grow up. Only you, the person who was favored by Hongmeng, managed to survive. You turned into an anomaly and completely changed the future of the untainted land. Hearing this, Feng Zichen understood that the appearance of Hongmeng Daozhong had nothing to do with Pangu. It was really an opportunity that belonged to him. It was also because of this item that he was able to survive and not die under the scheme of the Great Tao. Hongmeng, that is a power on the same level as the Great Tao. Not to mention me, even the Great Tao can't control it. Therefore, Hongmeng Daozhong, that is an opportunity that you obtained yourself. It has nothing to do with anyone else. You are a person who is favored by Hongmeng. Like me, you are an existence that has the potential to achieve eternity. Therefore, I treated you differently and supported you in every way possible. I also secretly guided you to destroy the plan of the primordial demon god and find the broken world that originated from the previous reincarnation. The Western world was actually found by Feng Zichen under the guidance of Pangu. In fact, thinking about it carefully, there was nothing strange. Since Pangu could see through the future, he naturally knew that the Western world would collide with the untainted land countless years later. In this way, he would be able to easily find the broken Western world by using this method. After listening to Panga's words, Feng Zichen's doubts were all solved. However, this was only his doubts about his origin. He also had doubts about his cultivation. It was not easy to meet Pangu, so he naturally did not want to give up this opportunity. Feng Zichen asked, "Great God, how should I use this eternal source to bring me the greatest help?" Feng Zichen did not understand the eternal source at all. Even if he got it, he would only refine it. He did not know how to make the best use of it. After a moment of silence, Panga's will said, "Integrate the eternal source into the origin mark. In this way, your origin will have a trace of eternal characteristics and will not be disturbed by external tribulations. Even if the chaos demon god curses you with the power of the great path again, it will be difficult to hurt you. In addition, the origin mark will always be baptized by the eternal source, which will also help you enter the half-step primordial chaos realm in the future. As for breaking through to the eternal realm, don't even think about it. If the eternal source is really so useful, I would have broken through long ago. Why would I need to split heaven and earth?" It could be seen that Pangu did not lack the eternal source. In this space, Feng Zichen saw many eternal source existences. This scene really shocked Feng Zichen. At the same time, it also greatly reduced the value of the eternal source in his heart. Panga's will spoke again and continued to break Feng Zichen's fantasy. The eternal source is not as precious as you think. You should go back and see your Daluo heaven. He already has some eternal characteristics. If the untainted world can go further and feed back to the Daluo heaven, it will be enough to make him transform and derive the eternal source. The Daluo heaven was the highest heaven in the untainted world. It was also the Tao world. It was known as the source of all Tao. It was the highest embodiment of all Tao in the untainted world. It was also the place where the heavenly way evolved the eternal world. In the imagination of the heavenly way, the power of the whole world was used to support the Daluo heaven and let it grow to the point of eternity. Then the power of eternity would be fed back to the untainted world, causing the whole world to transform and become the eternal world. Speaking of which, Feng Zichen did not spend much effort on the Daluo heaven over the years. With Panga's guidance, Feng Zichen replied, "Thank you for your guidance, great God. When Zichen returns, I will integrate my power and try my best to evolve the Daluo heaven." This time, Feng Zichen planned to lay his cards on the table. He would integrate all his incarnations so that he could enter the limitless realm. At the same time, he would also attain the Celestial Emperor karmic rank and become the real lord of the untainted world. He would control the heavens and earth and rule the myriad worlds. P.S. Today, double monthly votes, but this garbage update, I don't have the face to ask for monthly votes. Sigh. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.